So the first episode that we ever did was we'd watched Fellowship of the Ring, and we split it into 2 parts. And we were sat on the floor in this office, and we drank like a bottle of whiskey, and we were absolutely wrecked. And I was trying to tell this story about how Gandalf was a Maiar, and Becca gets up and walks out of the room, and we're recording it on my phone. It's before we knew anything
I
about
can't remember it.
podcasting. She gets out, she goes to the toilet, I hear the flush, and then nothing. She just laid down on the bed and went to sleep.
That's amazing.
And so I just ended up like rambling for another 10 minutes towards the end of the episode before I got to where I'd finished with my notes. And I was like, that's it. And then that was the... So if anyone's ever listened to our podcast from the beginning, there is a few people who they've been here since the very, very, very beginning. And they remember the original version of it. But 3-4 months later, I was sat on a train and I was like, right, if I'm going to do this podcast like a long term, then I need to clean up these first few episodes. And I went back and I edited it. And I don't know if you guys ever had this conversation where you're just getting into podcast and you don't know anything about it. You're like, I'm going to do something that's never been done. I'm not going to edit it. Everyone's going to get raw, unfiltered. That's what it is. There's no veneer of, I'm not going to pretend. And then you realize, well, no, people don't edit it to hide anything. They edit it because it's really fucking painful to listen to unedited content, especially if you're just rambling and you don't know how to speak in a certain way that conveys like you need a certain degree of concision. You need to be concise for a podcast, he says with a rambling answer.
Yep.
But you need to learn how to do that.
Yeah.
And until you learn how to do that, nobody wants to hear your fucking dead air and your ums and ahs.
Yeah.
So welcome back to A Drunk History of Middle Earth. So special episode today. We have got guests. We've got the Fool of a Took podcast on. And we're also joined by Becca. Becca's here. I'm here, Chris. And then we've also got Chris, or /Newhard, which is his furry name, and Pat from the Fool of a Took podcast. Do you want to introduce yourself, guys? Tell us a little bit about your podcast.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having us on, guys. We are Full of a Took podcast. We're out of the suburbs of Philadelphia in the States. And
Chris, tell them which one you are.
I'm Chris. This is your Pat, I guess.
I
Yes.
guess.
Who knows? Back to the talk of editing. No. So we have a podcast called Full of a Took, which is my wife, RJ, and I, alongside Patrick and his wife, Laura. And the 4 of us are doing basically like a book club style podcast. So in a nutshell, I've never read Lord of the Rings, but I have seen the movies. I really enjoyed the movies, but I didn't really understand a lot. And it's not a forgiving film. It moves fast. It doesn't explain anything. And you're just like, all right, got it. Good guys versus bad guys. That's about as much as I can get out of it. And then what happened was I decided basically that I wanted to read Lord of the Rings for the first time. My wife is a bookseller and she works at Barnes & Noble and she gets discounts on books. And she was like, hey, if there's any books you want like a discount on. And I was like, I'm going to buy Lord of the Rings. And she was like, why? Why are you buying that? You don't even read. Why are you going to buy the Lord of the Rings? This giant fucking book. It's huge. And I was like, I don't know. Maybe I'll read it. And she was like, you're not going to read it. You've read 3 books. We got together 9 years ago. And I'm like, okay. And then almost out of spite, I went over to Pat when we were sitting around getting drunk. And I was like, yo, I think I'm going to read The Lord of the Rings this year. This is 2024. And he was like, cool, man. Because
real awesome goal.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah. He's like, no, he's fucking not. He's not going to read shit. But like, what I need though, much like if I do like a weight loss challenge or something, like I need accountability. And so I need a reading buddy. And I was like, why don't you read it too? And then it very quickly turned into, I might have questions. We should hang out after we talk or after we read it. And then that became my wife being like, oh, I'll read it with you. And then Laura, his wife, was like, yeah, I'll read it too. And then we were like, we should just record ourselves talking about it. And then that became a podcast. And I am a psychopath who works in video production. So I literally was like, well, if we're going to record ourselves talking about this, I need to build a film set. I need to need to go all the way to the nth degree. And we did. We got together at room, and we put together a whole film set, and we bought all these props, and we painted it and hung lights on like a grid on the ceiling, and we shoot on a red camera, and like like we shoot on the
Fucking
camera
hell.
they used for The
Yeah.
Hobbit.
Like
Jesus.
this happened so fast.
This is
It
like
was
3 weeks.
maybe even less from when Chris is like, "Hey Pat, do you want to read Lord of the Rings?" I was like, "I always want to read Lord of the Rings." Yes. Okay. Now sit on this chair in front of this camera. And I mean, honest to God, it was like maybe 3 weeks, and it's like a full set appeared out of one half of his office, and I was just like, "Holy
Amazing.
shit!"
Yeah.
Right.
This is going to be one of those things years down the line. It's going to be like, and it was at that time that we didn't understand Chris was building a cult, but of course we knew what would have come next.
In
We'd have
hindsight,
intervened.
it's so obvious.
So yeah. Oh my God.
You were talking about how your first episode went, dude. We recorded our first episode, and like we didn't even get home because Laura and I we drove out to the set. We did the recording. We were driving back, and we looked at each other in the car after like 15 minutes of silence, and we're like, "I think this is a mistake."
What have we got into?
Wrong.
Annihilated. None of us knew how to talk on a podcast. We were like, "Oh, Pat, you should talk now about this thing."
You know what's really cool?
And it was like the old SNL thing with Chris Farley, where he's like, "Do you remember when this happened? That was cool." And
Oh, terrible.
like we were just like,
Absolutely
"This is so stupid." And I had like a panic attack because I went to the office the next day. I got the memory card out of everything, and I start to sync the video to the audio to the board, and the audio was corrupted.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
I was like,
No, this
"Oh
is a
my
good thing.
God!" I had like a panic attack, and I texted everybody like, "I'm so sorry. I just convinced all of you guys to do this podcast with me that I'm the tech guy, and there's no audio." And everybody in the text group went, "Thank God!" And I'll do it again. And so once we did it again, we figured it out. And so now once a week, we've been doing. We're releasing season 2 now, which is the Two Towers. We just started filming and recording and reading season 3, which is the Return of the King. But yeah, we have just been having the most fun time doing our show. We've got some really, really awesome fans who tune in every week and they want to hear. We've got some really annoying fans that hate me. We've got a lot of people who love to correct. I don't know if you ever got this. Probably not, because you guys are like, Chris is like, researching and notes and meticulous. We drink about 4 bottles of wine and probably have about 2 or 3 beers to start and maybe a glass of whiskey afterwards. And we're just going. And
Yeah.
by the end of every episode, most of us have said things that don't exist, or we've said things that are just insanely, no one can ever hear this or see this. This is going to get all of us fired. This is like, we're going to get canceled. And so we
Yes.
have to edit so much. So we record about 2 hours and 40 minutes to 3 hours and 20 minutes every week, depending on what the topic is. And then we put out a 60 to 75-minute show, sometimes 90 minutes if it's really, really long. But specifically, we like it to be nice and clean and tight and edited really well.
It must be. It's interesting as well because you start to do. I'm shit at maths, so this is terrible for me to do this. But you start to wonder. You've got then 4 people, so it's like how much content can you cover in that time? So and then cutting it down is interesting. But our production timeline, if you will, is very, very different in that it almost doesn't exist. It's very much fly by the seat of our pants, and it's been working like that for 3 years. I'll do the research, and I'll go down some crazy rabbit hole. There's only been once or twice I've ever had to take something out, and it's mainly just cleaning it up. Once was I accidentally said, there's been a couple of times where we've accidentally said like our daughter's name, like we just want to keep her off the internet because she can go to the internet when it's her time. That's fine. But another one was one that I took out was I accidentally mentioned my friend's name, who's a lawyer, like a solicitor. And that was I just beeped it. It wasn't anything crazy. But then talking about taking things out, I went on a bit of a tirade because we're covering Aragorn at the moment. And I'll tell you the direction we're going, which is interesting. I went on this rant last episode about the royal family being like paedophile protectors, and I didn't take that out whatsoever. So I do stand-up comedy, right? And I have this joke that I do at the moment quite unfortunately very topical, where it's not a good time to look like an evil paedophile because chances are you are going to be one. If these people weren't villains in the rest of their lives, it'd be easy to get away with. And I said, like, one thing, do you know what really surprised me? Is if one day I turned on the news and it turns out that there was historical allegations against Aragorn and Gandalf, that they'd been seen, enticing hobbits to an island off the coast of Gondor and drugging them with pipeweed. I said, that would be surprising news to me. And so that stays in. But at the moment, so Aragorn Part 2, so we did like a 9 or 10 episode run on Sauron, and I cover everything to the nth degree. So with Sauron last episode, we covered. Well, you might have got to this actually. You've been through Lothlorien, so the Elf Stone.
Yeah.
And do you know the gift that Galadriel gives to Aragorn?
Yeah.
Incredible amount of history behind that, to the point where even Tolkien couldn't decide on its origins. It might have been made by Celebrimbor, or it might have been made by a Noldor elf called Enerthil, who lived in Gondolin. But it might have been made by Celebrimbor, who lived in Gondolin. And it might have been the original stone, or it might have been a copy of the stone made by Celebrimbor because he was in love with Galadriel, right? So there's like all of this like deep stuff. And do you know how Aragorn gets called Estelle sometimes, which do you know, like, if you recall that, it might just mean hope. It actually doesn't. It's much more complex than that. Estelle is the philosophical concept of that elves have, that in their heart they know that everything will be all right in the end. Like the end, and when I say the end, I mean the end of the universe. And so it's these things like that I wanted to cover off with Aragorn. But I've also went on a bit of a tangent, and this is for my listeners for the next Aragorn episode. I've currently wrote 1,000 words, just thereabouts, about all the health problems Aragorn would have in real life because he is technically classed as being inbred, because his parents are second cousins, which satisfies the term of a consanguineous. So there is a term called consanguinity, which means descent from a common ancestor, and it means second cousins or closer, so first or second cousins having children results in things like sickle cell anemia and thalassemia. So I've just done this whole fucking bit of research, and like I've got all my so I've got some friends who are like, "You're finally covering Aragorn." I'm like, "Yeah, have a look at my notes." They're like, "No, don't do that. Don't cover that." So yeah, so you're talking about me being meticulous, going to the far end of a fart. You have no idea.
Yeah.
Aragorn and Arwen are cousins, like 67 times removed, right? So, and then his parents are second cousins. So in real life, Aragorn would be more like Sloth from the Goonies. He'd be like, "For Baby Ruth!" running towards the Black Gate, tripping over his fucking duck feet. So that's so don't worry about I know free speech is on the outs across the world, it seems. But don't worry too much, guys, because no matter how bad you get, I'm probably worse. Now, and you talk about your set. It took me 2 years before I found a Specsavers on Facebook. I think Becca found a Specsavers on Facebook. Do you have Specsavers at the shop you go to get glasses and stuff like that?
Yeah.
Well, one of them was going out of business in a town nearby, and they were giving away a divider, and it's soundproof enough that I went and picked it up. And now that just sits, like, it's next to me. Like, I'll show you. It's just this big green there. Like, that's a little bit of a sound divider. And then I got some Amazon sound paneling.
Nice.
So that's the level we're at. But sorry, moving on. I don't want to distract from the episode. So you're in Return of the King, right? You've got a good feel. You understand that you'll have met Denethor by now, or you'll have heard a lot about him. You're probably thinking, what the fuck's a steward? What the fuck's all that about?
Yeah,
What's going on?
I've had a lot of questions about that actually with Pat, and he's been very reluctant to answer too much because Pat's been so good at being spoiler free for me for a lot of our discussions. But it was like we just went and we met Denethor, and even going into his sort of hall in Minas Tirith, he's like not in the king seat.
Yes. So, Chris Newhart, do you understand? Do you know any of your history of Gondor? And so, do you know why there are stewards now? Because the answer is incredibly petty and incredibly silly.
Don't embarrass me. You know this answer.
I think that there was a different bloodline that was the king, and I don't know too much, but I think he left and never came back.
Yes. Yes.
And that's about as much as I know. And the dude Denethor stayed behind, or his not Denethor, but his family line.
So yeah, so it was the most unkingly behavior, right?
Half a gold star.
Good answer. Yeah. It was King Earnor of Gondor in the I think it's around the year 2050 of the Third Age. So the Nazgul returned to Mordor around the year 1980 of the Third Age. So about 1100 years before the events of Lord of the Rings, right? So they started coming back to Mordor, and the Witch King of Angmar, the head of the Nazgul, he challenged King Earnor to a fight. 1v1 me, bro, he said. And his steward said, please don't fucking do that. That's silly. Don't do it. He went, all right then. A couple of years later, he tried again. And King Earnor said, all right, I'm going to go and fight him. He goes to Minas Ithil, the Tower of the Moon, the city, the Tower of the Moon. And he just disappears. That's it. The stupidest fucking end for a king. He gets, I sure hope this evil, tricksy betrayer guy won't pull any tricks on me in this one-on-one honorable fight. And he just disappears. That's it. King Earnor just disappears. Gone. And the stewards are probably left shaking their heads and just be like, I don't know what more I could have done.
But at a certain point, you're the steward. Don't you look at yourself in the mirror and go like, it's better this way?
Yeah. Especially if you're not as inbred as the kings. It really was for the best. Like, I imagine if the Habsburgs in our real world, they had stewards, things might have been a bit better for them.
But they had such powerful jawlines.
They did, yeah. That's so I kept Googling, like I kept trying to get pictures of Aragorn inbred, and all that kept coming back was do you know the Giga Chad Squidward version of Aragorn with like the really strong jawline and the massive forehead.
Yeah.
And that always came back. So, but yeah, so the reason we have stewards and the reason that you have Denethor and Boromir is because one king. Well, the stewards would have been there anyway as an office, but they just the king. He was silly. He couldn't resist a fist fight with the Witch King, and of course he just gets. Yeah, I imagine it's just he just gets dragged inside Minas Ithil, and then he's gone.
Right? There was never going to be a fight. He's just dead now.
No, he's gone.
He's in a little box in the basement. That's where they keep him. They feed him every once in a while.
So is it there can't be another king then because there's the bloodline's dead, and so the stewards are just permanently not allowed to be king, but they have to watch over.
Well, it's the office. It's I think the people of Gondor. I think there is mention at some point in the books somewhere that they said that I think the question is asked, and they just say like, the steward. Well, first of all, the office of the stewards is more ancient, more pure, and more powerful than most kingdoms elsewhere anyway. So the prestige isn't really a concern. Because, but also being a line of the kings is a very specific thing. We see it in the north as well, where when the kingdom of Arnor eventually, and I think it's King Arvedui, who is the last king of Arnor, Arvedui, the office after him then becomes the chieftains, it's the chiefs of the Dunedain, right? So it's being a king is a very particular office, and I think it's tied to a very particular bloodline. But there's also, I imagine there's a lot of factors that go into this. It's never mentioned really in the books or the films, but in Gondor there was a civil war called the Kinstrife, and apart from kerfuffle that elves don't like to talk about, that happened a couple of times in the First Age. There's generally not many civil wars, and the Kinstrife, but this Kinstrife was all about keeping a bloodline pure for Gondor, because there was a king whose dad mingled and humped a woman who was seen as of lesser purity, and other people in Gondor were kicking off about that because they thought they were diluting the pure bloodline, and that started a civil war. So what I'm trying to say is there's these confluence of things that I imagine Denethor and Ecthelion before him and others would be very, very, very aware that if you try and make a steward, you can't make a whole housewife, is what the stewards essentially are saying is that like it's not worth it. You know, like one, our office is pure and it's more prestige than most other kingdoms. Two, it would cause more trouble than it was worth. But you know, there's many reasons for it. But those are the ones. I mean, Pat, what do you think?
No, I think you're absolutely right, because the conversation you were referencing before was, I believe it was Boromir saying to Denethor, his father, like, how long must a steward be a steward? And Denethor says, in other kingdoms, 100 years, 50 years, whatever. But in Gondor, 10,000 years would not suffice, because it's the honor of the office of the steward of Gondor. The entirety of their legitimacy is built on the idea that they are a placeholder for the king's line for when the king returns. Not if the king returns, when the king returns. So if you're built on the idea that one day the boss is going to show up, you can't step into those shoes.
Right.
Because you're setting yourself up for what? Just to get...
He's like a professional line holder.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah. Like, so all stewards, as a general... Faramir is a bit of an exception to this generally, apart from so Boromir the first. So funnily enough, Boromir the first. So Boromir we know is the second. Is Boromir the second, right? Boromir the first was feared by the Witch King. The Witch King feared him, and he was a steward of Gondor. And as a rule, they generally didn't tend to go to war or leave the realm. So stewards tended to be older men of advanced age and wisdom. But it's so there's a lot of that. I imagine maybe part of that would be as well, because it was King Romandasil, I think, or Romansil the first of Gondor, who made the office of the steward. They generally tended to be older men, and I imagine you'd also avoid the trappings of the young hotheads who'd get ideas like Boromir as a young hothead. What the fuck? Why can't we be king? Well, when you've lived as long as I have, son, you'll understand. You know, that kind of... Yeah, it's that wisdom that comes with age type thing as well.
Yeah, and that also, again, it plays into sort of what the purpose of the office of the Steward of Gondor was. Because the reason that king established the Steward of Gondor was to have somebody to mind the shop while he went away to war. So the entire sort of pull of history is against the Steward of Gondor being the king, and it's against the Steward of Gondor sort of doing anything truly proactive. If you view Gondor's entire history and sort of trajectory is sort of like contracting, getting smaller, right up until we get to the end of the Lord of the Rings and the end of the War of the Ring. But like during the Kinstrife, that civil war, like they hit a high point and then they never see that again. Like we as readers don't see that. No one we've ever talked to is ever going to see anything like that again. Aragorn changes things a bit, but like we're staring at a civilization and at a people that, like, when Aragorn tells, I think it's Frodo and the hobbits way back in the Fellowship of the Rings, he says, there are many stories about Middle-earth, and like all stories about Middle-earth, they are sad. And that's him reflecting on sort of the history of Gondor in the south and Arnor in the north, which are, the Dunedain kingdoms. And it's this idea that the world was always grander in the past, and that you can do things and good things can still happen, but that grandeur is lost and it's not coming back. It's lost forever. Like, again, then that sort of like, that's a theme in the entire world, because that's also the lens you have to view elves through.
100%.
Everything is fading.
Yeah, well, so I've got a question for Chris and for Becca, which is, what would your thoughts be if I was to have the opinion that the Lord of the Rings story, so Fellowship, Two Towers, Return, if I was to say that was a set in a post-apocalypse world, what would your thoughts be? Would you think that would be fair for me to say or not, and why? What would your thoughts be around that? If I was to say to you, Lord of the Rings is a story set on the same level as Mad Max.
Whoa.
Mind
Yeah?
blown.
Yeah. That kind of changes some things when you put it that way. I mean, the thing is that always fascinates me when we're reading like these chapters is I have 1,000 questions, and by nature I'm a bit of I don't know what the word is, skeptic. I'm constantly just like, no, what's going on with this? What's going on with that? And I constantly am asking questions about like explaining the world to me. My wife can read a chapter and be like, oh, so great that like that statue was like put on the ground, the head was cut off. That's a cool moment. And I'm like, yeah, but who did it?
Yeah.
And she's like, I don't know. They didn't say. And I'm like, that's not okay. I need to know who is
Yeah.
destroying this place.
Mhm, mhm.
But well, the good thing is with Tolkien, if you look you look hard enough, you'll find an answer. But yeah, Becca, what would what would your thoughts be on me saying that Tolkien, that Lord of the Rings was post-apocalypse?
I would definitely agree with that. And I think that's maybe why I feel like the Tolkien fan club is getting bigger because I feel like it's quite relatable. Like
Yeah.
I feel like we have a Morgoth and they are leeching into our world, and I feel like that's why we're striving for an Aragorn figure. We want the good person that we can rely on, and like, they're not going to be in the Epstein files. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like King Charles, like never follow that cunt into battle. Do you know what I mean? Like him and his fucking sausage fingers trying to finger the enemy. Yeah, but so this has come up on the podcast before. I attended a seminar previously that was by an American priest or preacher guy, and his talk was that the Lord of the Rings and the Book of Revelation, in that the Book of Revelation deals with after the end of the world, what happens, or during the end of the world. And he said, like, that an apocalypse doesn't always necessarily mean a bad thing. It just means the end of an old world and the beginning of a new. And through that lens, Tolkien's Middle Earth has experienced several apocalypses.
Yep.
Apocalypse. So for humans in particular, and again, we'll steer away from spoilers for the story, but I'll spoil some deep history for you.
Is that a real word, by the way?
No, absolutely fucking not. But if enough of us use it, it becomes one.
A group of them is
Apocalypse.
die.
So yeah, with
It's called
the
a
history.
shitbag. We've had a few shitbags here.
Yeah. So with Lord of the Rings, there's been a few apocalypses, and one of them, arguably, would be very soon after humans woke up at the beginning. So what do you know? Do you know too much about how each of the races came to be in the world?
Not really.
All right, very quickly then. Elves woke up under the stars. Humans woke up by the sea. Dwarves.
Can I do this one?
Yeah, go on then.
Dwarves were carved out of the mountains. Is that correct?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
no,
thought
yeah,
my
you're right.
memory
Yeah,
was doing
no, you're
good.
right. Yeah, you are right. Yeah. Aule made them, but he made them too soon. And Eru said, "Put them back to
Put them
sleep
to
till the elves
sleep.
wake." Yeah. So
Back in the oven.
basically, everyone wakes up, right? And humans, when we first woke up by the sea in the far east of the world, like beyond the far east of the Middle Earth map, in a place called Hildorian, okay? Eru, God, used to speak to humans, and then eventually he said, right, you need to figure things out for yourself, and he stopped talking to us. Morgoth, Sauron's boss, came then and presented himself as a god. And that when humans at one point turned fully to the worship of Morgoth, that is Tolkien himself regarded it as the first downfall of man. So possibly the first apocalyptic event, because humans
That makes
really
sense.
felt. And then the humans who rejected that are the ones who went right across the world to Beleriand, which is west of the Shire.
Right.
West of
That extra mountain range that we saw on the map.
Yeah.
Yes.
All that, yep. So they're the ones who, and then we have all that first stage type stuff. Then at the end of the first stage, there's another apocalyptic event, which is called the War of Wrath, when Morgoth is thrown down and thrust outside of. It's so funny. Tolkien specifically calls Through the Doors of Night. He does specify that it is space. So Morgoth essentially gets like launched into space. So he's just floating around out there, like
Alien.
Well,
Alien-esque.
except in some writings, he does say that he's decapitated, like he's actually he's executed. But that's a second
Is he just
apocalypse.
gonna become like Leia and just like in the Force, just like in the
It's just
like just like floating through the fucking space.
Help me, Sauron, you're my only hope. So that's a second apocalypse. Then you've got the downfall of Numenor, which is a third apocalypse. Then arguably you've got the War of the Ring, which is another world-changing event. Yeah, the Lord of the Rings is so what you're reading now. I don't know if it makes it more fun for you or what, but sometimes I like to imagine that just off screen there's people are running around in like fucking massive dune buggies playing guitars and that, because it's the end of the world again. It's another end of the world. Like, the elves are just like grizzled cop movies. I'm too old for this shit.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just a bunch of Lethal Weapon, like Danny Glover's.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so the thing is, for all of that, you can see that the office of the stewards, it's, even though it's been going for like 2,500 years by the time of Lord of the Rings, that's how long the stewards have been around, that it is an incredibly, it is an ancient office, but there might also be this sense of the kings and the stewards, that we live in the end times anyway, so it's either we do it right or we don't do it at all. Because after Lord of the Rings, everything kind of declines, doesn't it? But it one thing I do want to point out though, and I'll shut up in a second, is we talk about there being things declining and never reaching their height again. Pat was absolutely right with that. But funnily enough, Tolkien wrote, he scrapped. Did you hear that there was ever a sequel to Lord of the Rings that Tolkien started writing? Have you heard about that yet? Okay, so it was called part
Is he
of
still
you.
working on it?
Do you know? It wouldn't surprise me, right, if somebody finds it down the back of back of some drawers somewhere. Like the stuff that guy was going for 50 years, just mental, just writing for probably. But no, he scrapped it because he didn't like the concept of the long defeat, which means that because this sequel was set in the Fourth Age during, spoiler alert, Aragorn as a kid, but it was a kid out of wedlock. No, one of those things is a lie. But anyway, it's set in the future of Gondor. Sorry?
Which ways do his eyes point?
Is he blue?
He's called Joffrey, and he rules over a kingdom called Westeros. So in this scrapped sequel to Lord of the Rings, Tolkien abandoned it because he said he didn't like the idea of the long defeat, which is that evil will always win in the end. And so even though it can be at times quite depressing about, like statues with their heads cut off and the idea that the dwarves will fade away, the elves will go away, blah, 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 he still liked the idea that in the end good could win, which is just like interesting that he has so many world-ending events, but then he scraps it. He scraps one of the ideas because it was like, no, it's too depressing. It's like, where the fuck would you draw the line, man?
Well, it's like that's what is too depressing, right? Because like these fadings that happen by the elder races and everything, it speaks to the cost that you have to pay in order to fight the evil in the world, right? It saps the strength of the elves. The dwarves, they get hit left, right, and center. They don't recover. The Balrog may be self-inflicted. You can make the argument, but it's still there. We still know where the Balrogs come from. But the whole thing is that you can, if you've lived in the entirety of Tolkien's universe, then yeah, it is just a downward hill from the word go. But as a reader, say you enter into the Fourth Age, it's still cool as hell. Like there's still so much going on. It's just like, but when you understand the scale and the scope of the losses and the things that can never come back, the things that can never be again, it's like, oh yeah, this is just a bunch of like, weirdos and dune buggies doing circles and like throwing rocks at each other. Why do I care? And if you've written everything else, like what's the point?
Yeah. That also reminds me of like in the current modern day, when you're talking to like teenagers and children and their experience of life is nothing like, I don't know how old y'all are, but like it's nothing like what I grew up with or like what Pat, we talk about this on our podcast all the time. We're very nostalgic people. And like, I just the other day was talking to somebody and I was like, do you ever like ride your bike? Like my sister has a bunch of kids and they, we were talking to them and I was like, you ever just like go out for a couple hours riding your bike? And they were like, no, I'm not allowed to do that. And I was like,
yeah,
like, I'm not going to question that because it's somebody made that decision and I'm not going to override that and put doubt in your head that that's not a good thing. But it does make me think about like the age of exploration in the modern day for us, not in a podcast or in a world of, Tolkien world, but in the current US world for us, there's like a real change in our culture here. I don't know how it is over there, but like things are just getting different and the ability to be like young and explore the world and learn independence is gone. Like that's
Yeah.
gone away.
So what's interesting? So we're in our 30s. So I growing up, I was like we were like the last of, particularly in British culture, kind of like the last of a particular generation, right? One of
Build
the
your millennials.
yeah. So one of the things I always like to say is I was last of the generation to like my parents would slap me if I was being naughty, like you get hit. And it's had no lasting effects whatsoever, to be honest. Like, it's been fine. Um, but
Oh, you dick.
yeah, but no, it was like come home when the street lights come on. Like get out the house or
Mhm.
don't come home.
Not
Come home
allowed
when
in the house.
yeah, you're not allowed
Yeah.
back in the house. Come home. But what we are seeing now is where we live in the northeast of England. We're kind of starting to see that come back a little bit. Like
Good.
there is like there's kids who are always out playing on their bikes and stuff like that, and it is different because they're not as kind of like far roaming. Don't get me wrong. There's always the little dickheads who are always just out causing trouble.
Mm.
But we are seeing more and more kind of like normal kids like playing football, like during the school, or like going to knock on each other. The first time I saw a kid for the first time in years go to someone's house, put his bike on the drive and knock on the door because he didn't know if his mate was home or not.
Yeah.
I was like, the world's healing. Oh my God.
Yeah.
We used to do that.
Knocky nine doors as well. Like we got the day we got
like ding
knocky
dong ditch?
nine doors.
Yeah,
I
so-
ran upstairs and I was so excited to tell Chris. I was like,
Yeah.
we've just been knocky nine doored.
So
And I opened the door and there was no one there.
So we call it
And I was like laughing
well,
my head off.
So Becca,
Awesome.
this is fucked up about England, right? So where I'm originally from is 30 minutes away from where we live now, which is in the same area Becca lives. She calls it knocky nine doors. I call it knocky door run. Some people call it knock a door run, and other people call it is it ding dong dash or something
Ding
like that?
dong ditch. That's
Ding
what we
dong
call
dong.
it.
Oh, is that right? Yeah, yeah.
Knock,
Right.
run.
Yeah, you basically just bring on someone's door and fuck off, like just
Yeah,
run
yeah.
away and hide.
And then you watch
them.
it, and they open the door, and they go, "Nobody's here," and you go, "Ha!"
we used to do one as a kid where it's I wouldn't do it now as an adult. Well, obviously I wouldn't. But it'd be like you'd knock on the door and then pull your pants down, show them your ass, and then run off. We didn't have a name for it. There was one guy though. He used to pay me, so I kept going back.
No lasting effects whatsoever, though.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
had a conversation at the pub the other night with some friends, and the topic came up of it was myself, it was my friend named Pasquale who's like 40, something like that, and I'm 37, so he's like a little bit of the next gen, like the generation above me. And I was talking to a bunch of girls at the table with us, and I was like, you know what's crazy? Like, it's just a thought popped in my head. I was like, you know what's really crazy that I'm really bummed about is we've entered a world where like when my child grows up to be like a teenage boy, he can't just like pull his balls out and show his friend to make him laugh.
Yeah. We used to call it. Did you used to do it with like a group photo where one of you would have it out? We used to call it the cheeky nut. Like,
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, we would call it braining. And you would unzip your pants and you would pull one ball out and let it just be there. And you would act like it wasn't there. And you would just hang out. And then eventually somebody would see it. And then that would give you permission to be like, oh, you're looking at my nuts. You're so gay. Like, you would yell at them. And it was all good fun. And now I said this, and all the girls at the table were like, you didn't actually do that growing up, did you? And I was like, I think there's about 150 people who have seen my balls growing up. It was not a weird thing.
no,
They were
yeah,
like, what the fuck are you talking about?
yeah.
And
I mean,
I'm sure maybe in England, do you guys do the same thing?
yeah, well, yeah. We called it like we used to do it as like whenever you get a group picture taken, one of you'd have your bollocks out. Like, we used to call it the cheeky nut because like you could never be like the thing was it was always on the hope like your friend who wasn't as observant would be like, oh ma'am, look, I've took a picture with my friends. So yeah, Becca, next time we see some kids, I'm going to ask, hey, have any of you got your bollocks out recently? It won't go down. I'm pretty sure it won't go down well because I'm 32.
Yeah, you can't.
I feel like on a serious note, so in our country, obviously we have the threat of being stabbed. It's very rare that we ever think, like, if I was going down a dark alley, I wouldn't think I'm going to get shot. I would think I might get stabbed, right? But in America, it's like a normal thing to, like, that someone would have a gun. Whereas in this country, unless you are a farmer, like you go hunting, or you're a policeman, like it is not an acceptable thing to have a gun. So for us, like we think the worst that can happen to us. I still feel like, I mean, there'll be places in London where there is gun crime that's on the increase, but
Liverpool
definitely
as well,
where we live in the Northeast, it's more a thing of stabbing. And even that's like not huge, I feel.
Yeah.
So that's definitely scary. Like when we watch news and we see all the shootings in America, like I just don't understand a world where like we would never, when we send our child to school, we're never going to think, oh, she could get shot. It would be more like she could get stabbed, but as a teenager as well. Whereas like in your country, it's like even sending them to like a primary school, like little kids, it may happen and they could get shot. That's crazy.
Well, all of our schools do active shooter training. So when I was little, there was like, I guess there was a threat of nuclear warfare when I was a kid.
Late 80s, before the Cold War ended.
And I remember being like in a child, there would be people like the police would come in and they would be like, all right, if a bomb goes off and the school blows up, get under your desk. And we'd be like, okay, what's this going to do? And they're like, nothing. It'll just kill you faster. And we're like, all right, cool. And now they don't do that, but they do have like shooter training. And they're like, when they're like, this is the closet you hide in when someone probably brings a gun in to kill you. This is the closet you guys go in, and you wait for Mr. Andrews to come and knock on the door. And then if Mr. Andrews is already dead, you go see Mrs. Penelope. And like, you're sitting there going like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
But I think on top of all of that, we are probably pretty lucky in the sense that like, if somebody has a gun, we also can have a gun. So you wanted to, Chris was dressed like a cowboy last night. We can just be cowboys in this country. And just have duels with people.
Right. It's like, you know, it's not
we'll
with the Witch
die,
King.
but you know.
It's not the Witch King. And if you go to his house to fight him, you're not coming back.
Yeah. And which is very Middle Earth like the ability to live and die, and then it's done. You know?
It's, you know, it's very much what's neat about doing a Lord of the Rings podcast right now and talking about like, oh, Gondor and everything like that, is that as an American, you get to live in a failing empire.
Yeah. Instead of Valinor, you go to our Valinor.
So relatable.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is, so what's interesting is that we seem to be relatively similar ages, right? Is that there must be some commentary on the state of the real world that we've all chosen to dive so deeply into a fictional world. And where I was saying about Aragorn in particular, so like the you know, you got like good king. Don't get me wrong, still bad kings and bad leaders. But you've got like a good king that you can follow and like respect unconditionally because, like I said, there's not going to be historic allegations of impropriety against Aragorn. Whereas all of our leaders right now,
he's seen to that.
Exactly, like, you know, all of our leaders now, it's a fucking coin toss, isn't it, about whether or not they're doing some heinous shit like across the world. And that's the thing is that Middle Earth is that even though it is in a world in decline, in a sense that nothing will ever reach the height, the zenith it once did, it's still safe. Like children in the Shire, for the rest of time, will be happily showing each other their bollocks because you know, like that's never going to change. You know,
There's
like
just no raisins.
Yeah, Hobbit. I'd love the idea that hobbits are really tiny with massive nuts.
Well, actually, they're not. The humans have 2. It's possible that hobbits have 4 or 6 or something.
Well,
you know.
Unfortunately, I do hate to break to you. They are humans. Unfortunately,
all right. Wow.
They are an offshoot.
Offshoot.
They are an offshoot of humans.
You are an offshoot, my boy.
Interestingly, we're talking about Gondor and what have you. Do you know the origin of the term halfling? This was a very fun one that I like to find out.
Well, so we just met Treebeard not that long ago, a couple chapters ago.
Yeah.
And we also met Theoden, and they both Treebeard had no idea about them. But somebody said something like Hobbletion or whatever.
Hobbit, yeah.
Rohirrim, is that who did it?
Yeah. Well, no. So I'm not talking about the term hobbit. I'm specifically talking about halfling.
Oh, specifically, no. That's
Uh,
the only like old school
well,
thing I
so
know.
hobbitler, that is the actual Old English word in our real world. That means hole dweller, and that's possibly where Tolkien got some inspiration from it. But no, halfling is a slur.
Sorry.
Halfling is a slur, and halflings really don't like it when you call them halflings, especially with a hard G. But no, the reason they're called halflings is because when the Dunedain of the North first met them, Dunedain stand roughly, on average, about 6 feet tall. Hobbits stand about between 2 and 4 feet tall, about 3 feet tall. They are half the size of a Dunedain, so therefore they called them halflings. And hobbits hate it when you call them they are. It is a slur. So a halfling is a slur, which I find absolutely fascinating.
It was better than when there was a time period when they were called lingers.
What's up, my linger?
You got to hand it to the Dunedain though. It's like there's something about like looking at a person and like calling them a slur, and they know that. Everybody knows what you're calling them, but that person is perfect height to just whale you in the ball sack, right? Like you get a full rotational swing off of that.
Or if they have a knife, you're just getting stabbed.
100%. Yeah. Well, the thing is, like hobbits have got unerring accuracy, so it must like be generationally of Dunedain stood over the Brandywine River, saying, "Hey, you fucking linger," and throwing stones at them.
Especially because Beck was just talking about like there's a threat in England of being stabbed. It isn't Middle Earth sort of like based on England a little bit?
Well, so the Shire is roughly, if we talk about longitude and latitude, well, so the inspiration for the Shire was generally the kind of like the southeastern English countryside or southern English countryside. So it would put you on that kind of level. Mordor is more Mediterranean. Gondor is roughly the latitude of Italy. So they walk basically, like they walk to Italy from fucking Oxford, essentially. And Ithilien, which is mentioned in the books. I think you might have just got to the mentions of Ithilien.
Oh, yeah.
Ithilien is based, Tolkien was influenced by a town in Italy called Assisi, where St. Francis of Assisi is from.
St. Francis.
And it was one of, Tolkien said it was one of the most beautiful places. And the Ithilien, the inspiration for Ithilien came from Assisi. So if you were to map it to real world, it doesn't work fully. If you were to map it to real world, it would be that roughly kind of that, which is, yeah, it's all this stuff that I find beautiful. But then the idea that all of this, and then you've got the slur over there that is used liberally throughout the book.
Can I confess something to you guys? Every time, because I do this all the time when Pat talks about, I have like word association issues. I swear to God, it's some sort of learning disability where when someone says a word to me, if it sounds like another word in my head, I'm going to associate one word with another word forever. And we had this with Mythothil. And it was like, it sounded like a kid with a lisp talking to his like, Mythothil, Mythothil. And I like forever, that's my head. And I just start laughing whenever he says, like, oh yeah, like the Mythothil. And I'm like, fuck, I just start laughing. And so now the new one for me, because Ithilien has been brought up so many times, I'd start laughing now. It sounds like a made up number. Like, how many bugs were there? I don't know, Ithilien.
So
do you see
two Ithiliens were killed. Steward, my Steward Denethor
for a podcast because of this reason.
Mine's always like religiously, because we've recorded for like so many years. Mine is Dunedain. I always just have the intrusive thought, I do and I don't. Every single time. Every time Chris says Dunedain, I'm like in the background, like, don't say it. Don't say it, Rebecca.
Yeah.
I'm like, I do and I don't.
Yeah, she fucking does. The other one is, I love the idea that someone's like, God, Denethor, 2 Ithiliens have been killed. God, how many's in an Ithilien? That's a lot.
Where did we have that many men?
By Eru, our losses are devastating. But there's talking about bigger themes of like evil, and destruction in Lord of the Rings. So for Chris, everything pretty much can be traced back to Morgoth. Are you aware of Morgoth? So Sauron's boss?
Yep.
And there is a phrase.
Morgul blades and stuff come like the evil. I know it's all Morgoth is the person, but then there's like the world of evil that also has like the MORG feel to it.
So Gul is Sindarin for black or evil.
Yeah.
So it's GUL is that's the Sindarin. It's a Sindarin word that does mean black or evil. So, but then you've also got Morgoth, Bauglia as well. Actually, is it Mor? I think it might be Mor means black and Gul means evil or malicious. Anyway, but
yeah, like seagulls are evil birds.
Exactly. So all the in the world can pretty much be traced back to Morgoth because Morgoth. So do you know how Sauron made the One Ring?
Yeah, you got her. Sorry.
What'd you say?
I fucking
missed
hate
you.
seagulls. I fucking hate seagulls. I'm trying to move on because I hate them so much.
I think I need a drink. You guys just.
So all the evil in the world can be true. So do you know how Sauron made the One Ring? Morgoth did exactly the same thing, but the planet is his ring. So Sauron put his essence into the One Ring, and that is corrupts and taints the world. And Morgoth did exactly the same, but with the planet. So it's called it's original sin being released into the world, essentially, right? But that is called Morgoth's taint. And Rebecca, my lovely wife, every time I say the word Morgoth's taint, she just fucking loses her mind. It's ridiculous.
Rebecca and I are apparently 4 years old.
Yeah, the amount of episodes where I'm like, yes, Morgoth's taint. She's like, and sniggering it. I'm making like a really important point. And as soon as I say Morgoth's taint, she's like, gooch.
Oh my God, that's so funny. But that sums our whole podcast up too. We do.
Yeah, it is. But the so another thing that comes from Morgoth, which I'm trying to think of things to talk about that might just kind of color your understanding of the story. And
I love all this. This is so cool.
A little bit. That the only reason we're scared of death is because of lies that Sauron's boss told us. So originally, when Eru, God, created humans and what have you, he gave humans 2 gifts. One gift was that we would be able to create and do new things that other races weren't able to. So there's something called Eru's design or the plan, right? Or the Ainu Lindale, which is the music of creation. And it has a plan for humans and the entire world. And humans are able to fulfill that plan in ways that nobody else would expect, even Eru. It'd all meet the same end, but how we got there, humans could change, right?
It's like
that was one of his gifts.
Everyone else knows the music. Humans know jazz.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, we could get we got 5 minutes on stage, but how we get to the end of it, it's up to us. And
figure it out.
The second gift that humans had is that when we died, we would leave the world forever. Now that because elves don't do that, nothing else does that. Humans leave creation completely and they go to join Eru. It's what's called the Timeless Halls outside of the universe. But Morgoth convinced humans that death was something to be feared, and it's because of that and instead of it being a gift, now humans fear death because of Morgoth. So when you've got people like Denethor who are made like the Siege of Minas Tirith, where you see everything starting to go to shit because of like the scared of like losing the death and all that, and that allows Sauron to manipulate him through like the Palant, and it all comes back to Morgoth's taint. Rebecca. Yeah, there we go.
I thought that's what the Palantir was called, the little dark ball.
That's I don't know. Pat's probably told you this. Pat, have you told him about the little joke that a Palantir is? The language joke? I imagine you'll have come across this. Oh, it's Tolkien's. It's Tolkien's little joke. A Palantir literally just means television. Like so, but like it comes from so Palantir is far seeing, but the way it translates back into real world and the origins of it is literally television. It's being able to see something far away.
Telephoto vision. Yeah.
I love that Tolkien finds times to put puns like 3 layers into his own writing.
Oh,
He invents a language, and then he's like, I'm going to go back to Old English, to the German roots of something, and then I'm going to translate that into Sindarian, and then I'm going to age that a little bit, and then we're going to bring it back, and that's why they're called halflings.
And then I'm going to
Yeah,
write
Pat,
a
don't-
note in that language.
Yeah, don't start Chris off, really,
Yeah.
please.
Yeah.
I cannot deal with philologist. I
Did
cannot.
you know Tolkien was a philologist?
Well, so it's really awesome because I got to listen to some episodes of your guys' podcast, and it's like you do the dive, like you hit the hard lore, and it's amazing. And it's like with these guys, it's like I'm working on a surface level because it's like on the one hand, I can't spoil anything when we talk about the episodes because we're doing a chapter by chapter read through of the Lord of the Rings. On the other hand, I could spend 45 minutes talking about the Stewards of Gondor. Then the story would never progress, and Chris would go to sleep, and like Laura would roll.
Yeah.
But it's like there's such a richness in the work and in the storytelling itself that, like, obviously the story stands on its own. It's on autopilot. We just get to experience Lord of the Rings through the War of the Ring, or the War of the Ring through the Lord of the Rings. But all this stuff that comes from so many different sources that you have to dig through to compile your notes for these episodes and to gain this deeper understanding, it's bonkers. Because you start off by saying like he wrote for 50 years, like off the chain. Like nobody was checking Tolkien. He didn't have an editor that was like, hey, are you gonna, hey, JRR, are you gonna do another book? Everybody's like, no. No, he's just writing for himself. He's writing letters to his friends about things he's already written, revising past thoughts. And it's so cool because I forget what book it's in, but Tolkien says as much as like, when I started writing Lord of the Rings, I didn't know who Treebeard was. I met Treebeard.
Yes.
I didn't
Yeah.
know what Orthanc was like. I didn't know these characters when I set out. So this sense of like learning and discovery that is so fresh and so built on the deep, deep, deep bones of his world is so cool. And then to hear like the Palantir is a pun on television.
Yeah. It's so talking about Treebeard, funnily enough. So this is kind of spoiler free. So basically, Chris, if you haven't guessed by now, I'm just picking things I think you'll find is fun. Like we'll talk
I love
about
it. I love it.
So Treebeard, there is a rumor that Treebeard's voice and the way he's described as talking is, do you know C.S. Lewis and Tolkien were friends, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I can see Pat knows this story as well. And I don't know if he's told you guys. Have you told them? All right.
No.
Well, they both taught at the same college for a little while. And apparently C.S. Lewis had a very booming, deep voice. But if there was a couple of doors closed between you and you were down a corridor, you would hear, and that's where apparently Tolkien got the voice of the way he describes Treebeard as talking is from that. And the other aspect is,
man, that's so funny.
Ents in general came from Tolkien being pissed off at Hamlet.
Hamlet?
Oh no, Macbeth. Sorry, Macbeth. Yes. So in Macbeth, there is a prophecy that I can't think of it off the top of my head, but there's a prophecy that someone won't die until the forest of such and such comes to them.
It's Macbeth who, he kills and he becomes the king, and it's like, you will be king until the forest marches to your walls. And everybody read it as like, that's going to take hundreds of years for the forest to come up to the walls, and we'll just cut it back because that's something you do. Incorrect.
Yeah, do you want to tell us what happens in this?
So after Macbeth does a murder, Macbeth's whatever. The point is it gets real murdered up in that castle, and some people outside the castle find out, and they figure they're going to go, avenge the king and enact the laws and everything. So there's this final attack on the castle that is Macbeth's, and the forest marches on the castle, but that's because everybody's dressed in camouflage.
Okay. They use the branches and the leaves from the forest to disguise themselves, and during the night they walk up.
Like the army or whatever.
Yeah, the army. Yeah.
Well, that's one way to fucking kill somebody.
Yeah, but Tolkien read this as a kid, and obviously he was like, "This is bullshit." So when he says like, because he does talk about a character kind of walking fully formed into the story, and like Treebeard did, but then you look at possible kind of influences from beforehand, and that's the stuff that I love when I do the research. Like for example, the amount I've learned about incest from researching Aragorn's been spectacular.
Don't blame Aragorn, blame Elrond.
Yeah, true.
Elrond Hubbard.
Elrond Hubbard, yes. Elrond Hubbard. Yeah. Yeah,
It's another one of my intrusive
yeah.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah, true. Yeah. L. Ron Hubbard. Yeah, he leads a cult. He leads the cult in Middle Earth. You have to spend money on courses to learn about the Valar and Maiar.
Oh my god.
So, right, we've talked a lot about Aragorn and the Stewards. Where else are you up to in the book? What's going on at the moment?
Well, so the Witch King is huge, right?
Yeah,
Lord
I'm
of the
trying to remember
Nazgul.
what just happened. Oh, we met the spider.
Oh,
Oh, Shelob.
yeah,
Oh,
at the
yes.
end of the Two Towers.
Yep.
Hell yeah.
And then that whole process there was fascinating to me because the way that it was described was that Shelob was like this huge badass spider, and yet this little 2.5 foot hobbit is like Sam doing so much damage. I don't know. I had a hard time with like the mechanics of the physics of the world with that. And I was like, I mean, it feels like a raccoon against like an elephant. And like, I just think the elephant would just step on it. And I guess that's why Sam was able to pierce, the belly. The belly.
Yeah,
But
stinking glowing.
so
on
we
the
had
side.
that. We've had a lot of Minas Tirith stuff going on with Pippin and all the people arriving. And I've had a lot of questions about who are all, like there was that fat guy that they all were singing about.
Furlong.
Furlong the Fat or whatever they're singing about. And like, to me, I'm just like, there's all these people coming from all over the place. And Tolkien does this thing constantly as like a new reader to the world who doesn't understand almost anything about the world. He says things as if we're supposed to know about it. And he's like, oh, that's Brian from South blah, blah, blah. And you're like, I don't know what that is or where that is. And you're like, well, too bad. Moving on. Never going to say his name again.
You know what?
Like, okay.
You got to check the appendices. Check the appendix.
That's why I struggle. So you guys have adopted a new listener because I have only ever audiobooked the first book and I am like obsessive. So like I have to know who that person is. But I also don't have the time or the mental capacity to remember once I've learned who that is. So the audiobook's been the easiest way for me to follow the story. But equally, like it's just mind-boggling. I feel like it's not it's not an accessible read. So you guys are doing like a really great thing for people who, like myself, really struggle to read. Because I mean, Chris, like you sound like mine and Chris's like child almost because the obsessive nature of you setting up that whole studio and like making shit happen. That is a Chris. But then the fact that you've probably read like 3 books before starting Lord of the Rings, like I'm just like, yeah. That's me.
And Biff, Chip, and Kipper doesn't count as a book, by the way. So
Well, the nice thing is that technically when you read Lord of the Rings, you get 6 books.
yes, true.
That's true. That's true. I think that like that was the goal with Full of Its Hook. So, like I said, I've seen the movies, never read the books. I read The Hobbit. I took I did a job in Africa, and so I had like an 18-hour plane ride, and I forgot anything to do, and I was like, oh, shit. And at the airport, I bought The Hobbit. I was like, I'll just read this. This is a fucking. I saw the animated movie, and I was like, I know this story. I can.
What the Bankin and Rass one?
Yeah,
or the Ralph Bakshi
love
one.
that.
Or whatever it is.
Love them. I grew up on those.
Oh wow, I love collecting the Hobbit, the different versions of the Hobbit. So this is one from 1947.
Oh, beautiful.
The one of the most rare one I've got is a 14th pressing from 1940 something. It's worth about It's only worth about 600 quid, but like I love these versions of just getting new versions of the book. This is a 28 fourth edition. But yeah, the Hobbit. So for the longest time, I struggled to read Lord of the Rings as well, same as you. Like I just couldn't be fucked with it. The Hobbit, loved it, really easy, accessible. But the Lord of the Rings, I just could not get into for fucking ages. And it wasn't until actually I think it was the Andy Serkis audiobooks that really kind of turned the corner for me. And I was like, oh, okay. And then doing the research that I do for this podcast, I dive in and out of the material all the time. Like I've got like 12 fucking 13 books that I might consult for like one episode, and I use them as like references and stuff like that because I'm a big fan of showing you sources. So like I'll never just say like, oh, trust me, Like I'll say, and even if I can't find a source, I'll say it's like an unconfirmed note or something like that. But I wanna give our listeners or whoever, like, yeah, go and fact check me, like pull me up on it, and if I ever get something wrong. I once made the mistake. I called. He was the chief of Balrogs. Pat, can you help me out in the first stage? I called him Morgoth, but he wasn't. It was another. Oh, he's the name of the orc in Return of the King as well. Did you know the really fucked up one in the films? It was like the end of the time of men is over.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's not Maglaw. That's one of the sons of Fëanor.
Is it Michael?
Close. Oh, what's the king of what's the Lord of the Balrogs called?
You're killing me. I see. This is my problem. Is that I grew up on this stuff. Like my introduction to Lord of the Rings was every summer we'd go on vacation, and my mom would read The Hobbit chapter by chapter to my brothers and my sister and I. And so we'd get that every single summer. And then when we got old enough, she would do the Lord of the Rings just during the year. So like, a couple nights a week or whatever, it would be story time. So we'd all go hang out before bed and we get read a chapter out of the Lord of the Rings. And this happened for a while. And then eventually got to the point where I got old enough that I wanted to reread on my own. So I got ahead of the storytelling. But I was reading the Lord of the Rings like at least once a year from like the time I was like 10 until I was like 18.
Nice.
And so like that's when I fell in love with Lord of the Rings, right? And that's kind of our audience, right? I'm looking for people who are still falling in love with Lord of the Rings, people who want to learn more, but it's like it's a kind of a tall ask to jump in, especially because of the way the changes in contemporary literature and everything. It's like nothing's bad. It's just, but it's written in a different way. It uses themes differently, and the story is so much. It relies on like second and third layer information, like the things you discuss.
Yeah.
And that's not something that a lot of modern audiences are used to. So for me, the opportunity to share Lord of the Rings with people who are like, they're very casually interested, but they want to learn more. If I can get people reading Lord of the Rings, I consider this whole project a massive success.
Yeah.
Do you know what's really awesome?
On that, there's a very specific thing that we do on our podcast that most Tolkien Lord of the Rings podcasts don't do. And they are probably better than us for not doing it, which is every single episode we spend 35 minutes in a dramatic recap of everything that happened.
Nice.
And every single episode. So you can listen to our podcast without ever reading the book. Now, it's not the same. You're not going to get the experience of reading it, but you can follow the story and everything that's happening in a dramatic way, in a fun, exciting, dramatic way, because Pat gets very drunk and very into his storytelling.
Nice.
We built our podcast around the idea of, because we all we're big fire pit people. Like in a friend group, we love a good fire pit. We love sitting in the dark with a fire, talking for hours and drinking. And it's like, what if we just took that vibe where you like told a dramatic story? I don't know if you guys had this growing up, but we had a show called Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Oh, hell yeah. Absolutely. I bring fear the approval of the Midnight Society.
Yeah. It was fucking awesome. Yeah. And so we were like, what if we did that?
Yeah.
Where we told, and it was a big ask for Pat. And it's grown. The first episode, his summary on a long-awaited party or whatever, long-expected party was, no, not long. Was it long-expected?
Yeah, long-expected.
It was 14 minutes.
Pat, did you sum up everything that had happened in history before that night? It better have been to the tune of We Didn't Stop.
Dude, when we got to the Council of Elrond, I sat everybody down and I was like, you guys don't understand the pain it's going to cause me to summarize this in a way that gets us out of here before 2 a.m.
And it's so funny because if you listen to the first couple episodes, Laura also is his wife, it's her first time reading. So we're like the fools on Fool of a Took. And my wife has read Lord of the Rings. Pat has read it extensively. And so there's so many times, and Chris will get a kick out of this, where Pat is doing his best. And it's just like, can you tell the story of each chapter, like Are You Afraid of the Dark? And make it engaging, cover all of the beats, make sure I understand all the characters, the arcs, the story, the world, the lore, the history, the map, everything. Can you do it in about 20 minutes? And he was like, yeah, sure. And now, yeah. And then it became like an hour and 20-minute summaries that I have to edit down. But it's so funny because I'm like the asshole who kind of like with Becca, like Pat will be like, yeah. And so like, the Shire is like in the west. And I was like, well, what's in the north? And he's like, well, we're not talking about that right now. I'm talking about the Shire. And I'm like, what's east of the Shire? And he's like, shut the fuck up. I can't tell you any of that stuff right now.
I can imagine, especially at the Council of Elrond, like, so Eärendil, more on him later.
Yeah.
Elros, more on him later.
Oh my God. When I think it was the
Why is he called
chapter,
half elven? More on that later.
when Gandalf just name drops and Calagon the Black and then goes, I was like,
Thanks, bro.
it was like I had like a fucking heart attack on camera because I was like, I'm just not even gonna touch it because if I do, I'm gonna dive into it and I'm gonna have a good time and no one else is ever gonna come back.
Yeah. And I'm just gonna cut it all out.
Yeah.
Realistically, when we edit.
Who was on Calagon? Big black fella. Fucked a load of people.
Big dragon. Half of the world sank into the sea. We don't touch that.
Yeah.
That's not important. It is, but it's not.
A big fat fatty.
It is a fine line that we walk, though, and that's, I think, the really fun part, both between what I think and also what like people who comment on our podcast. And we have a bunch of pretty devout listeners
who hate my pronunciations.
So Pat's from New Jersey, and New Jersey people are just born with a speech impediment. And I'm also from Philadelphia area, and we also talk terribly. So I stand with you, brother, on that. We don't pronounce anything correctly. But there are there's a fine line to walk, and this is why I made this podcast. There's a fine line to walk between enjoying a new story and feeling left out while reading a new story. It's a fine line. I can read this book by myself, but I will feel left out because I don't understand anything in it.
By the way,
it's like Shakespeare.
Yeah, it was. By the way, it was Gothmog. Was the name I couldn't think of.
Yeah.
So what's interesting is that we've come at the same thing from different avenues, right? So you wanted to like have other people fall in love with Lord of the Rings and take them along on the journey. I put so much of the effort. So when we did our first batch of episodes, which was just the films, I started doing more and more research so that Becca would understand it, and then if anyone listened, so mine was like, and this is it's kind of quite a gay thing for a married man to say, but it was like an act. It was almost like an act of love. It was like, I want her to understand this in the best way possible. So to do that, I've got to go make sure that I understand it to the fullest, so then I can simplify it in a way that isn't going to make her feel left out, that she doesn't like, that nobody knows like what I'm talking about. And then you find people respond well to that because you in the end of it, like, this is a very overused word nowadays, but it's quite inclusive, isn't it? You're bringing people into it. You're bringing them in. Like, right, I'm going to explain something. It's all right. You might not understand it fully. That's cool. I'll break it down for you in a way that everyone can understand. So you talk about, exactly. So you talk about like, you talk about fire pit vibe. Ours we went for is like, so one of the things I was going to call this podcast was Tolkien Tavern Talk, because I wanted that tavern kind of, that tavern atmosphere where it's like we could just be having this chat while we're just in a pub together. And it's interesting that like you're going chapter by chapter, whereas I'm just like, oh, okay, right, here's a bit of the world that I think's really interesting, let's talk about that. And then it always, every few episodes, kind of culminates together. Okay, now we're ready to tackle a big subject based on what we might have briefly discussed before, but it's still not super duper important because you can still enjoy all these bits of the world without everything else. It is fascinating how you have different ways of coming to the same thing, and at the end of it is that you just want to foster this love for something that you love. Like, you love this world, and you want to bring people along the best way. So
because there's a bit of gatekeeping in the Tolkien community. I don't know if you guys experienced this.
My fucking God, yeah. So I'm just going to go off on one for a second. Yeah, fuck those fucking fuckers. So there is the Tolkien Society.
That's why I messaged you, bro, and I was like, "Hey, I fuck with your podcast because fuck these people." And you were like,
exactly. Like,
and I was like,
yeah. So there is the Tolkien Society, right? And I'm not the biggest fans of them because. So I talked about attending a seminar previously, and there was some really good talks about like like it being in a post-apocalyptic world and stuff like that. But there is some stupidly arty-farty academia bullshit where I listened to one talk about Eru Iluvatar as a listener god. It was incredibly fucking pretentious. And the lady who did it barely mentioned Eru or any of the story beats whatsoever. It was just a vehicle for her to be like, look at me kind of thing. And then there was another one where it was the flight of the Noldor could be seen as Jewish exile. And again, rarely mentioned anything within the story. Now, the irony of this, right? And I've said this to a couple of people, and just to wind them up, I said Tolkien would have fucking hated you. Because there is an essay that Tolkien wrote called The Monsters and the Critics, right? Where Tolkien spent most of his life studying, translating, and doing work on Beowulf, okay?
Yeah.
But one of his biggest criticisms is that academics who studied Old English and Beowulf did, and this is very specifically, he said, they do almost anything except discuss the stories they're meant to be researching. And we see that so much now with these online Tolkien creators. You are doing anything you can except talk about the fucking stories that he wrote or talk about the world that he did. It's like, and that's the gatekeeping I fucking hate. So I cancelled my Tolkien Society membership. It's not just them. They're just more of a symbol of it. It's just that very kind of arty-farty, highbrow academia. And there's this account on Instagram, which is it's called like Meditations for the Anxious or something. This guy does like speeches, and one of them is about academia, where he says like the revolution will be sanitized and locked behind a paywall of a peer-reviewed journal.
Yep.
And it's stuff like that. Like when I see it with Tolkien, I rally against it as a kind of it's a partly is love for Becca and wanting people to bring it, understand the world, that I'll do the research. I'll do the heavy lifting for you so you can digest it. But also, I don't monetize the podcast. I don't have like a Patreon or anything like that. I do it literally for the love. Like I've got a good enough job. I don't need to do it. It's a big fuck you to anyone else who's like tried to gatekeep Tolkien as to like, you can't have this knowledge, blah, 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 blah. So sorry, I said I was going to go off on one. Hopefully you understand how strongly I feel about that.
I love it. I love it. I feel the same way when the reason that I even wanted to do all this is because I love, like I told you, before I did the podcast, I listened to a lot of podcasts, and I knew about Prancing Pony for like 10 years, and I would like tune in once every year and a half to a single episode, and I'd turn it on, and it would say 2 hours and 55 minutes remaining, and they would talk, and I'd have no fucking idea what they were talking about. And I'm like, I read The Hobbit, I've seen the animated movies, and I've seen The Lord of the Rings, the live action movies. How do I not know what you're talking about?
I've seen and read everything.
Yeah.
So this is so I actively,
we're doing a podcast, and we're the punk rock Tolkien podcast. We're gonna come in with 2-minute songs and not 8-minute ballads. We're gonna keep it simple, and we're gonna make it so that someone who's never ever read anything by Tolkien ever can be at the same pace that I am at.
Yeah, 100%. Like, so the one of the things I take the piss out of like listeners when they come to me about it is like, oh, I'm just catching up with your podcast now. I'm like, right, unless it's a mini series, what the fuck? I was like, no, it's not chronological. Jump and picks. Like I always say, I'm like, we've got nearly fucking 80 episodes, man. Like, you don't need to catch up. Or they're like, oh, I've binged it. I'm nearly caught up. I'm like, it's not an ongoing. It's not like, you know, I'm not going to assume knowledge for the past. Like every episode for me is a new one. If there's callbacks to other episodes, I'll say, right, I'm going to talk about Dragon, but if you want more information, go and listen to the Dragon episode, right? I'll give you footnotes to my own work. But I always take the piss out of people when they say like, yeah, like I always take the piss out of people because I'm like, it's not chronological. Find a this is what I do with Last Podcast on the Left, for example, right? I find something I'm interested in and then I'll go and listen. I don't go right back to episode 1. Because I'm going to do, I'm hopefully going to do this for years and years and years, right? So like, you don't have to start. It's not chronological. I mean, you know, our first episode now, it just happens to be the creation of the universe, right? But that's just whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, just find a subject you like and dive in there. Obviously, if you can see it's a 9-part series, you wouldn't start watching Backdoor Sluts 9 and think, oh, I wonder what happened in the first 8. You go back to number 1. Do you know what I mean?
I think you have found the exception. I think you found the exception. I feel like in that
That
case,
explains a lot because I watched 4 and I did not know the plot very well.
they did really hit the storytelling beats until Backdoor Sluts 7.
Yeah.
Revenge. It's perfect.
It's that whole that Patrick Bateman. It's like they really came into their own artistically and commercially. They really came into their own in that incest video I watched. But yeah, no, this if I did social media clips anymore instead of just memes, this would be a very good point to do a clip of gatekeeping in Tolkien is ridiculous, and it's just as bad as people who use it to further their agenda. So the one thing that I will not stand for is I will hear you out on any point as long as you come correct. Like if you come with your evidence and you come with your supporting, like that's why I'm so keen on like giving notes. And I don't ever want anyone to just say, oh, I trust you, Chris. Absolutely not. If you're ever in doubt about anything I say, I need you to go and look it up because I could be wrong. If I've interpreted it differently, that's different. But if I've give you the wrong information, I'd feel terrible, right? I lost sleep over a Gothmog versus Morgoth, like, fuck up. And I've corrected it 5 minutes later on the same episode. But there's also, so like, for example, there's a Tolkien creator called Kaya K or something like that. She's a lovely lady. I did an episode on a podcast with her where we discussed Ungoliant. Shelob's mom, right? Gigantic monster spider, my favorite creation in Tolkien's entire legendarium is Ungoliant because I love Lovecraft. I love Eldritch stuff. And she is the closest you get to an eldritch being. However, as part of that episode, me and Kaya, I found an article for us to read together, and it was a journal paper. And this journal paper, the first half was amazing. It was about how sin and femininity are inextricably linked, in that sexuality is historically seen as being bad for women. But then this author goes off the rails because it's all about women in Tolkien. It's about Shelob and Ungoliant in Tolkien, how they are examples of unrestrained sexuality and how that in a Christian sense could be seen as sinful, and that they are specifically said to mate with other spiders and then eat. They don't they're not married, they're not monogamous, they are like they're like polyamorous sinners essentially, right? It's evil because they are taking the dominant sexual role in a relationship, which is, if you know your Bible or some versions of some Bibles, like links to like Lilith, Adam's alleged first wife, etc. in Christianity, right? Anyway,
yeah,
that premise, unbelievable, because then that opens the whole gateway, and this is what me and Kai talked about for over an hour, of feminism in Tolkien, how Shelob and Ungoliant could be seen as evil creatures, but it could also be seen as unrestrained sexual freedom within Tolkien, and how that blah, blah, blah. But then the second half of this paper does the cardinal sin where it starts talking shit about Galadriel and Éowyn. And how, and Arwen, how like Arwen's a prize to be given away. Éowyn is can only get by being a man, and Galadriel is like impotent and inconsequential, blah 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 blah. And it's that second half where it really all went off the rails, because it's now, okay, this author's got an agenda. And then it turned into the typical Tolkien doesn't write women very well, blah 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 blah. And that's another element of the community, whatever, fandom, whatever, where that really gets my goat, where it's an obvious agenda pushing. It's the same people who say that, the Noldor elves were colonizers. Get out of here, prick. That's what I mean. But it's I don't know, like, have you had any experience with that? Like,
well, so we talk a little bit about presentations of women in the Lord of the Rings specifically, and we don't get to talk about Ungoliant at all. I think I mentioned spiders once when we talk about, like, where did this giant evil spider in the mountains come from? That even Sauron.
It's a travesty, by the way. Because you constantly want to say so much, and I have to unfortunately say no.
I know.
It's unfortunate because that giant evil spider in the evil mountains is the daughter of an even gianter evil spider in even eviler mountains.
Right.
It's like, it's so cool. And I'm like, stay on track, Pat.
Yeah.
And he's like, fine.
And that's an interesting thing. I'll quick diversion, but that's an interesting thing in Tolkien's themes, that it's not just good that diminishes; it's evil. We're not fighting the big bad guy anymore. Now we're fighting his like
Yeah.
second potato. Like
What's that? That Austin Powers. You're like evil light. You're not quite evil enough.
Yes. Well, that's what I said, right? What happens after you kill the devil? Well, I guess you gotta go find a lesser demon, and then you work your way down. But but to get back to what we're talking about as women in Tolkien a little bit, we talk about those characters, and it's not that those characters are unimportant. It's not that they're not powerful, because I'm a lot like Gimli in that if you talk shit on Galadriel, I'll cut your head off. This is not negotiable. But for the other female characters, they're few and far between. But it's not that they are weak characters. It's just that it's not viewed from the present and in a contemporary sense. The cast is not as integrated as you would want, right? It's basically the boys going on an adventure. But when this was written, that was standard, and like that's who it was going to be. And it's like he doesn't disrespect women in his writing. Worst case scenario, he has a blind spot over them. And it's like, but the women he does bring into the story matter a whole fucking lot, and they're extremely consequential.
It's quality over quantity. So you've got fucking Luthien. You've got is it Eowyn, Erendil's wife? No. Oh shit, man. Anyway, but then you've got Idril, like of Idril and Tuor. You know, you've got Turin's sister, unfortunately.
It always comes back to incest, but
All
We
incest.
got Lobelia.
Lobelia Sackville Baggins. I nearly.
I'll be fair. Tolkien writes one really shitty woman, and it's Lobelia.
Arguable. No, we're going into spoiler territory there, though. I'm going to leave that alone. We'll leave that one alone. No, like Tolkien's women characters are very consequential. They matter. But I would also ask this. Have you censored Pat out of explaining the format of what Lord of the Rings is in universe? Has he covered that with you?
No.
Right.
That's 2 layers too deep, because it doesn't matter to the understanding of the story. That's more of like a fun thing that helps explain some of the context and how things go. Like,
Well, guess what though, Pat? It's my podcast, so fuck you.
Cool.
I'm going to tell him.
I'll tell him. I'm getting a beer.
I'll tell him. So, you're not reading a story, right? So when you read Lord of the Rings, you're not reading a storybook. What you are, so Tolkien presents Lord of the Rings as a manuscript. It is a long lost manuscript that he discovers, and he translates it from the language of Westron into English. And Lord of the Rings isn't a story. It is a historical account. And all of Tolkien's writings are historical accounts. So all the writings of Middle-earth, they're not storybooks written as stories. They are historical accounts set down as an account of the War of the Ring. And The Hobbit is Bilbo's historical account of the journey to Erebor and back, as how the Lonely Mountain was reclaimed. Now, there is also a little fun bit at the Council of Elrond, which you might have already covered, probably, that Tolkien covers a retcon, in that the very first published editions of The Hobbit had different account of Bilbo getting the ring. Yeah. So Bilbo then says, if you've read any other account, it's because I was bullshitting. Sorry. So the reason being, the reason I say this is you are reading a history book, not a story that has been translated from Westron into English. And because of that, it is perhaps in universe more forgivable that women aren't talked about as much, because it mainly concerns itself with like the history. Men tended to feature more in history, just like how, like, when you eventually get to the appendices, I wouldn't bank on seeing a lot of women talked about. There's some, don't get me wrong, like Dees, for example, is probably the only female named dwarf, I think. That's Thorin's sister. But but the thing is, the women who are talked about are very consequential and notable, which would track kind of with real life or real world, in that histories tend to concern themselves with the patriarchal line, the male line, because that's the male line of succession. Yeah, but like from our real world view, for me, talking shit about any of Tolkien's women's fucking ridiculous, because like they're straight up really important to any story they're in.
Yeah,
You know, whereas some of the blokes are just himbos. You know, like
Mhm.
they are. But fun fact: in Lord of the Rings, you already know this. I'm telling Becca here. In Lord of the Rings, there are more named horses than there are named women, which is crazy. Someone did a count up. There's like 11 horses named by name, and there's not that many women named by name, which is but yeah, I think Pat's right. Like he never ever did it out of malice. Like he wrote Luthien, so one of Aragorn's ancestors and Arwen's ancestor, Luthien, one of the most beautiful women to ever lived. It's based on his wife, Edith. Like he wrote he wrote an entire mythology for his wife. Like the man loved women.
Isn't
Like
that on his grave?
yeah. It's yeah. It says like
Like on his
it
actual
is on his
tombstone?
it is on his grave. Yeah, people will go and visit it. Did she die before him? I think she did. Where he said like Beren has lost his Luthien
Yeah.
or something like that.
Yeah. I think he has Beren and Luthien on their tombstone, which is pretty cool to include that. You
Jamie,
know?
pull that up.
Jamie, pull that.
Yeah, Edith Mary Tolkien, Luthien, 1889 to 1971. John Rolkin Tolkien, Beren, 1892 to 1973.
We call
Yeah.
him Jert on our podcast.
Jurt, yeah. There's I've got some friends. We call him Jurt as well. That sounds like a sentence a man with no friends would say. Yeah, I've got some friends too.
Yeah, I also have friends that I talk to them about this stuff too.
Yeah, I've got friends. I've got
you
friends.
don't know them, but they're real cool.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
just
we
go with
actually
the-
talked all night for longer than 200 hours. So, you know.
They go to a different podcast.
Oh, I have a question. So in the United States, the joke when someone's pretending they have a girlfriend or whatever is like, oh, she's Canadian. She's in Canada. She's from Canada. That's why you don't know her. That's why you haven't met her. I have this foreign girlfriend from Canada. What's the equivalent over there?
We do. I think they used to say she goes to a different school. Obviously, if I'm saying that in my
That's funny
30s,
phrase.
it's a bit dodgy. Oh, you wouldn't know her. She goes to a different school than the ones you hang around at. Me and my royal family friend. Yeah, no. But funnily enough, like the Canada thing was quite widespread here as well. If you said like, "Oh, I have a girlfriend who lives in Canada," like everyone knew as well. It was shorthand for like bullshit. It's just one of those weird American thing. But so you talked about Pat being from New Jersey. What was really funny is, and I'm sorry, obviously as an English person, I'm going to bring up The Sopranos.
Fine.
I've just really I've just finished watching it the other month. But one thing I've started
fucking
saying,
brilliant.
it's unreal. But one thing I've started saying to my friends is, remember when is the lowest form of conversation? Because like with your friends, like you do a lot of the reminiscing, and that's like it's one of the lines on the show
Yeah.
when Tony's pissed off at Paul. He's like, remember when's one of the lowest forms of conversation? And
Yeah.
a lot of the podcast though is, remember when we covered this? Or remember when this happened? And
Yeah.
I just got Tony in my mind.
Well, so we do a little bit of The Sopranos on our podcast because at one point we talk about like where elves live and where dwarves live, and like any patch of woods could be elves theoretically.
Oh my God, yes.
And the Sopranos episode where where they murder that Chechen in the
He's a
barracks
fucking
with
interior
Pine
decorator.
Barrens. The interior decorator, and he gets up and he leaves in the whole thing, and they're like chasing him through the snow.
Yeah.
The Pine Barrens, that's South Jersey. That's like basically where I grew up.
Oh, I remember
hell?
flying over that when we went to New York a few years ago. And
It's
it was
like a
whoa.
unique biome on the planet. It's like there's tree frogs in there. It's like it's nuts, but it's really just pine trees and hicks.
Yeah, I remember like flying over it, like, Jesus, it's like, he killed 16 Czechoslovakians. Guy's an interior decorator. His house looked like shit. Oh, God.
We
It's
talk
so good.
about basically all the time. My wife and I love The Sopranos, and I'm always like, I feel like I'm Tony Soprano because I feel like, in my prime, I was so good. And now I see in our
Ducks.
house, I see little baby bunnies in the backyard.
Do you have Pat there? Pat, when he gets drunk, it's like, he never had the makings of a varsity scholar. A varsity Tolkien scholar. Never had the makings of a Tolkien scholar.
And I get like wimpy now, and I'm like, look at the little bunnies in the back. And it's like right out of the pilot of The Sopranos where he sees the ducks in the pool, and he's like all about them. And I feel very much like I watched that, and I was like, I relate to this very much because I watched it for the first time as well with my wife about a year and a half ago.
Oh, nice. It's transformative. Speaking of animals in Tolkien, though, what did you think about that fox that has sentience and then is just never talked about ever again?
My gosh, yeah, and fellas.
So I have a theory on this, but I want to hear your thoughts first. I have a theory that I've spoke with other Tolkien people about, and they seem to quite well accept it. But I want to hear your thoughts.
Well, there's two thoughts I have. The first thought is, can you guys refresh my memory on the fox?
So when the hobbits are leaving Hobbiton and they're traveling through the Shire, there's a passage from a fox that says, "There's hobbits here. That's unusual." And then it goes about its fox business.
Yeah,
But we
it's
have
like it's hobbits sleeping out of doors. How weird.
Yeah, it's like when they're okay. Yeah. And there's 3 of them.
yeah.
we don't
So
have Mary yet.
we have a sentient fox. That's just
Yeah.
then never.
My second thought is you can find this out on my Patreon. No, I do think it's really interesting because we've met some sentient beings so far, non-human things. I'm curious at the world in which the reach in which whoever you guys talked about, Eru, that's not much of what I know about, but I'm curious at the reach of the hand that gives life and sentience. I know the elves gave the trees the ability to kind of think. The elves live in the woods.
We'll
I
come
don't
on to
know.
it in a second. Yeah. You're
Maybe
almost
they have
there.
something to
Yeah.
do with
They taught them to speak. They taught the elves taught them language.
Yeah.
But the elves also taught
obviously,
themselves
like the
language.
trees are living beings on their own, but you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
but
So-
to become like, hey, I'm going to communicate something.
Right.
Mm.
Complex idea about
That was
why,
like a gift.
why they're not going to
given.
squish Merry and Pippin.
Yeah. So that was a gift that was given. If there's a fox that has the ability to kind of communicate like that, I would probably wager that was a gift given as well. And who it was given by, not sure if I have a reliable answer, but I could absolutely take a guess that it was probably Lobelia.
But for real though, with the fox thing, it's like two thoughts. Is one like, okay, there's also like, Saruman can use birds for spies. The enemy can use birds for spies. Like animals have, and it's not explained. So it's magic in the sense that like you don't understand where its edges are.
Yeah.
So that's a cool piece of the world building. But for me, I'm gonna be super real. I blame C.S. Lewis.
Yeah, okay.
Expound on this.
Yeah.
Yes, Lewis wrote The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, where it's just talking animals are just a thing. It's just it's a kind of mythology and a degree of
Ooh.
mythology that C.S. Lewis leans right into. He brings in Santa Claus. He's got talking lions. He's got dwarves and all the giants and all the rest of it. But it's a way more. And not to denigrate Narnia because I love that series too, but it's way more cartoony. Like it's a very like almost an Aesop's fable level, whereas Tolkien has always been like, I am a linguist. I'm designing language. There's going to be a world. There's going to be a mythology and a cosmetology, and we're going to have bloodlines. And yeah, there's going to be a little incest, but hold up, the ride is good. And like, and it's kind of like this lighter touch. But I've always blamed C.S. Lewis.
I like that. It's like, oh, yeah, I like that. What do you think, Becca, like, of a sentient fox that's got 2 lines in the book and then is just never fucking mentioned again? Like, what would your thoughts be on that?
I think it could potentially be a nod to the fact that having the wizards, like, I feel like even with Radagast, like he has this power over nature, but also utilizes and harnesses the natural world around it. So I feel like it is probably just a normal thing in that universe that everything has that ability to speak, communicate, and also because a story, you can have that element of like being able to translate.
Yeah.
Whereas in real life, we don't have that ability, obviously, to speak to animals. But just a little nod to kind of show that it's a whole world interacting.
Yeah, to give, like, depth to the world.
Definitely. And as well, we have the characters. I'm just like, my memory's absolutely shocking. But we have the bear guy.
Yeah.
Oh, Bayonne, yeah. Bayonne, yeah.
Like
Oh,
he,
yeah.
like, yeah, I just feel like it's not like a big deal that a fox would have a personality. I don't feel like it's an unusual thing,
Yeah.
especially granted that tree.
What? Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I have a comment on that. So here's my. This is the entirety of our Full of a Took podcast right here, which is a very rational answer being given, and me going, wait. I want to talk about that. So you think that it's not out of the ordinary that there would be a talking fox within the Shire? I agree with that. Or not the Shire, whatever it is, Old Forest or something like that. I agree with that. What is curious is the time in which it is presented to us.
Mm.
If this fox were presented to us in Athelion,
Oh yeah, I
it would
like
be
where you're
different.
going with this. Yeah,
It'd be very
this.
different.
Yeah.
We are at a time where talking sentient non-humans is not a thing yet in the book when we're reading it. So
Mhm.
it's casually brought along. I mean, we like sit with the hobbits to see the elves, and we're all like, as they're walking in the middle, it's like it's a spectacle to see something other than who we're with in the book. So
Mhm.
I think that is. I have no other thoughts on that, and I don't have any like, oh, let me explain anything. But that's the curious like pin in it for me, which is
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
agree wholeheartedly. But what drives me nuts and keeps me up at night is why was it presented so early in the story?
This is
I
where
think
this is where mine comes in. I think Chris has demonstrated. I think all four of us have just demonstrated. None of us have had a fucking original thought in our lives, because my theory that I thought I thought going to blow your tits clean off was that I think it represents the boundary. It's the boundary between the Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings. Start of the time it's presented is still very whimsical, very shirey, very hobbits going off on another whirlwind adventure like Shrek and Donkey, right? In that's when it's presented is that, but that's the boundary is that you're leaving the world of the Hobbit, which was more ostensibly a children's story, and you're entering the world of the actual epic of Lord of the Rings, right? So you've had some talk from Gandalf that shit you up a little bit about like like this big bad and all that, and then you've had some callbacks to Bilbo's adventures and he's disappeared with his magic ring at his party. And then when you see the fox and I see the fox as the last bit of whimsy from that old story before this. Now we're getting right now into the new story of this is a historical epic now. And that's where I see that, and that's that why we see that as the last thing. So the time is presented, because if it was presented right at the end of the book, you'd be like, "What the fuck was that?" but it's still early enough in the book that you've had the Shire, you've had a little bit of shittery with Lobelia, Hobbits being taken away in wheelbarrows, and stuff like that, like the fun stuff. And now you're heading out of the blue and into the black because it gets very dangerous very quickly after this. And that's where I think that's why I think the fox is there as that
That's a
last
great
little
theory.
hurrah of narrative hurrah of right where this is the gentle
it's getting
easing
real.
with the shit's about to go down.
So it's interesting because to me that barrier has always been the night they spend, and it's very close narratively when it happens. But it's the night they spend with again the first time they really talk to elves is Gilder and Glorian when they spend the night in the Elf Hall, and Gilder is talking to Frodo and is like, "Has Gandalf not told you? He's not told you about any of the things about all the capital B capital S bad shit happening as I head west and you head east. Gandalf's told you nothing." That's a problem, but not for me. I'm headed west. Good luck, kid.
Sucks to be you, bro. Night.
And it's like, and that's when you're like, oh, they're really unprepared for what's happening.
And that's even like that then links in with the fact that almost like the fox is like the first other type of being that's like strange. Like maybe you guys should turn back because I'm going this direction, and like how do you guys not know this? So yeah, that links really well.
It's really just a
I like
speed
that.
bump so that you don't question when Legolas talks to the rocks.
In Hobbit, yeah.
Because if he did that without a fox talking earlier, you'd be like, what the goddamn shit's going on?
I love Legolas in the story because he's like, you could take him at face value and he's still just such a like an emo asshole.
Yeah, just a
But
little himbo.
oh, dude, He is so much. He's like, I sleep with my eyes open. That's why he doesn't talk in half the scenes. Motherfucker is sleepwalking through Lord of the Rings.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
like, I don't
Well,
really care. I came
well,
here to apologize for the fact that my dad lost Gollum.
so Tolkien himself. So Tolkien about that. He Tolkien himself says that elves are on the decline. That's why so many of them are leaving in the Third Age. And because so do you know I mentioned earlier that God gave two gifts to humans? One was to leave the world when we died. The other one was to
All
be
the
able
time.
to affect change in the world, to do things with our free will. And Legolas, Tolkien himself says that Legolas probably achieved the least out of all the members of the Fellowship, and that elves in general became impotent in the Third Age. Not like the dicks don't, well, not like the dicks don't work, but that elves became less and less able to do anything of consequence in the world, and that's why most of them are leaving. Like, they can't raise the armies that they used to, and you know, just shit wasn't as good as back in the day. So, but it's really interesting that you talk about Legolas being an emo and a himbo when we've got that. So, but one thing I want to mention off quickly, and I think I think we're starting to come towards the end of our time together. But one of the things we'll cover off is that you mentioned the trees. So Ents and eagles are in some writings inextricably linked, right? They are notable exceptions. Eagles are sentient creatures, the giant eagles in particular, but they are more or less the exception. The other one being Ents. Ents were taught to speak by the elves, but they didn't give them sentience. They didn't give them true life or anything like that. Only Eru can give true life, and that's why dwarves, before Eru gave them life, so when Becca said earlier that dwarves were just made out of stone, they were essentially just robots for a bit, because Aule, one of the Valar, the lower G gods or demigods, whatever you want to call them, when he wasn't moving them with his mind and interacting with them, they would just stand still and stop. They didn't have true life. Eru, capital G God, gave them life as it was like a pity thing. But the what happens is, in some writings, Aule is married to a woman called a Valar called Yavanna. And Aule is responsible for like the rocks, the mountains, the earth, the mining. He creates the dwarves, but he's married, opposite attract, to Yavanna, who's responsible for all the growing things in the world, like the trees, the plants, the flowers. And she's worried that the dwarves are going to chop down all of her babies and burn the ground, because dwarves like to create. So she goes to their boss, who's called Manwë, and says, Manwë, can we get some help? Manwë talks to God, and God sends some lesser spirits into the world, and these are the eagles for Manwë to use as his watchers across the world, and the Ents. So some of these spirits go into the trees and they become the Ents, and they have sentience because so Ents and eagles are a much, much lower order of spirits, like the wizards. So that the wizards are called Maya, right? And the the Ents and the eagles in most writings are much, much lower, like magnitudes of those same types of spirits. But the elves are the one who taught them to speak. They taught them language, in the same way that elves taught themselves language. So when elves woke up, they started singing and started making up language and stuff like that. And elves are known as the speakers. And that's why the Ents love the elves so much. But I just wanted to clear that up, is that nobody can give sentience
Apart from
except Eru,
Interesting.
which is why there's multiple theories about what orcs are. They might be twisted
Yep.
humans or twisted elves and humans. They might be oh god, there was even a script at some point that had orcs as like twisted bird creatures.
Oh,
It was the
no.
Zimmerman script in the 60s.
Oh, Christ.
Was it Zimmerman? I think it was Saul. Yeah, it might be. I think it was Zimmerman, or somewhere beginning with a Z. A guy who wrote a script for Lord of the Rings that was fucking terrible.
Yeah.
But they had the orcs as like bird creatures, and it was pretty
What-
cool.
He just went straight to the Muppets with Jim Henson and with Dark Crystal, and then they got the Zexy and all that. Those nightmare bird creature Muppets. Holy shit. But
yeah.
but the interesting thing about the kind of the what sparked this is that Chris's comment about the elves teaching the trees teaching Ents to speak, that's in the Ents' own words, right? So like that's how they view themselves. So it's neat to see how far and how rich the storytelling is in this world, because like the world is old enough that things have been forgotten and they've been reinvented and retold, and then they have these layers, and it doesn't diminish the storytelling. It doesn't confuse the storytelling. It actually just makes the world a richer and, I would say, more interesting place. But the point of everything that all of us right now are doing is we're trying to make that accessible, and we're trying to dig out those secrets and find those gems and present them in a fun and casual way. When this podcast that you do is the result of maybe hundreds of hours of research and experience and exposure and love. And so it takes a lot to get to where like this discussion is right now about, eagles being a lower order angel, and explains why here in the Lords of Eagles and the whole damn thing with Chris. I apologize. I will never get into with you guys.
Yeah.
But it's super cool. And I don't know. It's so exciting to me. Like,
Yeah.
I love this shit.
And
The
all
Eagles
of our
are
lives would be infinitely
assholes.
easier if we just didn't have
Yes.
podcasts, by the way. We could just do this at home and then not have to worry about all this stuff. But you bring up a good point, which is like it is sharing is caring, and
Yeah.
it's like if as a film person who works in movie stuff, Jesus, my
That's okay. You're fine. Movie stuff.
my
Stuff
cohorts
moves.
would be upset at me for calling it movie stuff, but everybody for the last 10 years has been asking me when I'm going to start a podcast. And it was, you should make a podcast about the project you're working on, or the people you're working with. You can ask all the directors, writers, actors, whatever. And it's like, dude, you said this early on. I forget what the phrase was. You had a phrase for it, but it was like,
Busman's Holiday.
and it was like, don't ruin this for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if I'm going to do a podcast, it's going to be on my time about something I don't give two shits about.
Rude.
Yeah.
And we've also the fact that, we're white and in our 30s, it's inevitable that you
Yeah.
make a podcast at some point.
Yeah.
And
And
all we can
society
do
was like, you should have a platform.
Yeah, exactly. All we can do to limit the damage control now is make sure we don't end up selling courses on how to sell courses
Yeah.
and start calling ourselves alpha males.
Yeah.
You can read Lord of the Rings as well.
But the funny thing is, now that I've made a podcast about something I don't care about, I really care about it. You know what I mean? It's like fuck. But it's funny you say that about like, oh, you're inevitable to make like a podcast, because we have an okay listener, like fan base that listens every week. I don't know, it's probably like
Hi, Mom.
300, 350 a week or something like that tune in. And inevitably, those are not the same people who watch our YouTube clips.
Yeah.
And the people who watch our YouTube clips hate us with a passion.
It's
like
very
they've never
different
read Lord of the
demographic.
Rings.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's quite funny because several times we've gotten, I admittedly am the fool in the Fool of the Took. I don't understand the world. I want to understand the world. I don't know the literature. I want to know the literature. And so many comments from people being like, they should make podcast equipment more expensive. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So what weird
that's tough to hear.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. I could literally, I'm missing half a finger. I could count on the fucking hand I'm missing half a finger the amount of arseholes I've ran into over the last few years on this podcast. There is a couple of weirdos, but there's generally the harmless weird. There was one guy who told me he was going to eat me when I first started setting out.
The glue trap guy.
Then I'll talk about him in a second. But there is weirdo. There's rarely ever any genuinely like malicious people. Like we don't get hateful comments really. Like, and I don't know whether I don't know whether it's my voice or like I've got no hesitancy calling people a daft cunt. I'm sure it'd be daft cunt. Maybe I just sound too rough. I don't know. But yeah, we don't really have to deal with. But the point I'm going to make, anything from that does come from YouTube clips. It's like people who, it's like the kind of cunts who send your emails at work and you're like, it's amazing you've learned to write before you've learned to read, because you've got no idea what the fuck's going on right now. Like,
Yeah.
it's more unpleasant platform. But the one guy who takes the biscuit, and I haven't seen him for about 8 or 9 months now, is he's been plaguing us since we first started the podcast, right? And he's very devious. He's like Saruman, right? When he's tricking the elves in the Second Age, when he forges the Rings of Power, because he starts a conversation with me on a new account, and it takes me a couple of hours before I realize it's him, and I block him again. He's called the Glue Trap guy, right?
The glue trap guy.
The
Well, how
Glue
does he
Trap
get that
guy.
name?
I'm gonna tell you.
Do I want to
He
know? Do I need another beer?
He starts a conversation very innocently, right?
Uh-huh.
And then he starts asking, "Oh, who do you think would be stronger, like Feanor or Gil-galad?" Like just stuff like that, right?
Uh-huh.
But then he's like, "All right, okay, who do you think would be stronger, Arwen or Daenerys Targaryen?" And then this is where it starts to turn. Inevitably, just like the corruption of the One Ring, the conversation always turns to, what if they were barefoot and stuck in a glue trap? Do you think they'd be able to pull themselves out? And that's the turning point of the conversation, right? Because no matter what happens past then, he'll persist and he'll send videos of women trying to walk through glue traps with their shoes and socks off. And he's like, what if they were laying down in the glue? Would they be able to pull themselves out?
You are being harassed with a capital H, and I know Americans are viewed as litigious, but you should sue this man.
The thing is, like, I suspect he's wanking when he's talking to me.
Dude, everything is left-handed.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's 100%. Because like the thing is, like, I blocked him. Like I blocked him. Yeah, I blocked him. The first time I blocked him was 3 years ago. It was after like a week of conversation. I was just like,
I would need a shower
because he keeps asking the same questions again and again. And then I was like, I stopped responding, and then he kept going and sending more of it. I was like, how many fucking videos on the internet of women in glue traps? So this is very neat, but none of it was. It wasn't like overtly sexual. Some of it was from like, I think some of it was from like MythBusters and that.
Yeah.
Where like that Carrie lass was trying to get out of a glue trap or something.
No, that was she got the nope.
But
everyone knew what was happening.
You should find the clip of the girl who's stepping on the grapes and she falls and knocks the wind out of herself.
On the news, it's like, oh! But so I blocked him.
No, really though. But final thoughts on a scale from Galadriel's feet to Eowyn's feet, where do you think Arwen is? Don't answer that. I'm so sorry I asked.
We found him, Becca. It's 3 years and we found him. He started his own podcast.
Gotcha.
Right. Oh, okay. Right. Last one. Quick fire round. Fuck, marry, kill. Gimli, Grima Wormtongue, Theoden. And why?
Man,
I would kill Theoden.
Because that's what he wants.
Because he would be so happy. I would fuck Wormtongue.
Oh.
No. Is it because he's Brad Dourif or for something else? Bookworm.
I would do it just to humiliate him. It's a submission thing. It's a pride thing.
That was you said that in such a sexy way.
And
God, I wish people could see your face when your eyebrows did some like weird wiggle. Yeah. Your eyebrows did the worm then.
I would, and he's facing up.
Missionary.
I got the legs. I'm holding the legs this way. And it's just balls hitting balls.
Nice.
So hold on. Is it movie Wormtongue or literature Wormtongue?
I said literature because you can't have Brad Dourif. Like,
yeah, literature Wormtongue has the spaghetti noodle tongue.
You got to stay away from that.
But it would be a submissive thing. Like I'm not into BDSM, but it would have to be that.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
And I would be doing it as a punishment to him. Of look at me, I am the captain now. You know,
there's my mug off taint.
All right. So very quickly, kill, marry, fuck, marry Gimli because he just got
always marry Gimli,
but with the understanding he will always love Galadriel and not me. I get it. It's okay. Yeah, we can.
You could go twos up because you said you loved her as well. So
I mean, yeah. Actually, hey, maybe that's the selling point. Maybe that's the end.
What's Sindarin for finger trap?
Gimli's like, I got to show you a little trick.
Oh, hang on, no. Baruch Kazad, I Manu. I think I Manu is upon you because it's Baruch Kazad, I Manu. The axes of the dwarves are upon you. So you just shout I Manu as you come in. I'm upon your face. I'm upon your cheeks and nose. Fair enough. So you'd marry Gimli. Understandable. Dwarf marriages. They've got very low childbirth rate. Well, it'd be lower in yours, I imagine.
For me and him, it's 0.
Yeah, it'd be zero. It'd be like the Vatican.
In a romantic thing, it's more of just best friends.
What do you mean it's not
That
romantic?
dwarves do get married. So when dwarves do get married, it was very difficult because they would cherish their work above anything else. So the birth rate for dwarves declined into the fourth age, and they disappeared because of this.
You know, those ladies are about their careers, and that's okay.
Yeah, and so what was your last answer?
Honestly, it's the same as Chris. It's kill Theoden because he wants that. That's what he wants. Always a king, never a corpse. Ride and die. The man wants it. And then Wormtongue is, I mean, there's nothing else to do with him. I guess you get it done and you go home. Chris is making this more of a circus than me. I'm doing a job.
Fair enough. Rebecca?
It's spectacle for me.
I don't want to be a basic bitch, but I feel like the same. Like, I want to say something different, but those options are pretty bleak. I mean, yeah, I just
Becca,
definitely
what would
the
it
same.
take to
But
marry Wormtongue?
the thing is, though, like, it's
It'd be good at giving you the old lickaroo, though.
yeah, exactly. That's kind of the logic I'm going down, is that he'd be really, really good with the owl lickaroo.
Yeah, imagine being the first man able to fucking lick a G-spot. Like, could you?
You guys hopping around.
Yeah, exactly.
He's coming for your prostate, buddy.
He can do the he could do the Tengwa alphabet with his tongue. Never mind. Could do the two dots at the top of the ear. Like, fair enough. Fair enough.
And I love
fair
a man with an intense stare.
Ah, fair
There
enough.
it is.
Oh, yeah.
There it is.
I would marry Theoden because I'd be either a king or queen for a bit, but then I'd get to go into mourning. I wouldn't be expected to marry again, and I'd get to live in Rohan for the rest of my life, just chilling. Dealing with the Dunlendings, maybe, depending on the time frame. I would fuck Gimli because
Ooh, yeah.
I'd pull his back hair into me.
I was going to say pull his plait.
Yeah, I'd plait his back hair so I grab onto.
That's just a carpet. It goes straight from his hair to his beard to his chest to his balls.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So yeah, marry Theoden, fuck Gimli, kill Wormtongue.
Oh man, yeah. That's all you
How
got.
would you kill Wormtongue? Because I described vividly how I would kill Wormtongue on an episode.
This is pretty weird. Not weird, but like he wouldn't get on a horse in the book when Theoden told him to. So I'd drag him behind a horse until he
Great.
No, that's perfect. That's poetic.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Poetic.
Like the thing is, like, because he's such a
Medieval.
bastard, I'd make him run until he couldn't, tied to the horse, and then just dragged along.
Yeah. Oh man. That's a good
Right.
one.
This has been amazing. So, as our guest, as a little bit of a palate cleanser, a little bit of a lemon shot at the end of an Italian meal, would you like to tell the listeners, the poor bastards who've made it this far, what you're up to on the podcast now, where they can listen to you, and what your plans are? What are your plans for after you finish the books? You're going to tackle the Silmarillion? What are you doing?
Okay, so right now we're at the Siege of Gondor in the Return of the King. You know, we do an episode a week. We're gonna keep rolling. RJ's gonna have a baby, so there's, you know, we'll see what the release schedule looks like, but like we're gonna at least get through the 5th book with a break. But the ultimate goal here is, you know, we're gonna finish Lord of the Rings, and then I'm told I may be on my own for the Silmarillion, but I think I can convince enough people to come along for a quick read of The Hobbit for fun. Because I would love to get into the more deep, heavy lore stuff like you do, but I'm still enamored with sharing the story of the Lord of the Rings, and The Hobbit is that prequel, right? It's that preamble, it's that fun thing that happens just beforehand.
The Hobbit feels right too. It feels like, to preface the Hobbit conversation, everybody has been saying, when you're done this, are you going to do The Hobbit? Are you going to do a season on The Hobbit? So it feels like it's a natural thing we'll do. We may take a break after Lord of the Rings because this is a lot. I mean, it's an hour to an hour and a half of reading on a Sunday. It's 3.5 to 4 hours of recording on Monday nights. It's 12 hours of editing the episode every week for me. It's 2 hours for preparing, the publishing, the distribution, the thumbnail creation, the clip making, the uploading, the putting in the files, the getting ready for the TikToks and all the things. So it's like working a part-time job for fun. And we're about to have a baby, RJ and I. So it feels like we're going to wrap Lord of the Rings and then I'm gonna most likely pull a classic Chris and go, "I'm done. I quit." I'm gonna have a couple drinks and text Pat at 2 a.m. and be like,
I come
"So."
back to you now at the turn of the
Yeah,
tide.
3 months later, be like, "So, what's the Hobbit situation?"
Yeah. It's like no, it's Barry and Luthien or bust.
Yeah.
Oh, I was going to say that the Lave Lathian is a fantastic piece
Oh
of
my god.
like because you've got so much you can do. Like you've got the text versions, but then you've got the poem you can go through as well, which is it's my favorite poem of Tolkien's is the Lave Lathian. It's fucking huge.
Yeah, well, it's beautiful, and it's
It
again
is.
because it's Luthien is a stand-in for his wife, so it's like there's so much emotion. It's so cool, and that's actually what RJ wants to do. RJ loves Baron and Luthien, and she would any
Yeah.
chance she could have to dive into that. I know she would, but like it's there's so much material. I think is the point is that there
Yeah.
are so many options to go through, and like once I'm let off the chain a little bit, I don't know what's gonna happen.
Oh,
And I also
it's
want
amazing.
to figure out a way to let Pat evolve the format of our show.
Mhm.
Because our show is like we have a very strict format. Like, as someone who works in TV and film, like, we follow, like, there's like almost like a script, even though what we're saying is not pre-written. Like, we have a format, we have a start, a finish. This is what we do now. Then we go to this, then we go to this. We have an outro. We have a food segment. Every episode, we have a food for thought. Our final segment of every episode, his wife Laura prepares some sort of food or beverage, alcoholic drink. Maybe it's a cake. Maybe it's this. Like the couple weeks ago, she made Sam's rope,
It was great.
a big marshmallow rope that was covered in like a beautiful powdered sugar. And so we all had like
That could be taken a couple of ways, like lads. I'm not gonna
Like
lie there.
she's
Yeah.
showing me up right now. Like
Yeah.
this
It's
is
really cool.
ridiculous.
And other times we've been very drunk from like she'll be like, "This is like fire whiskey or
Yeah,
whatever."
no,
We're like,
speaking
"Fuck,"
of drinking gin, she made a Lothlorien fizz that she served us at the end of the night. It was a 6-ounce glass with 4 ounces of gin in it.
Yeah.
Well, we were
See,
drinking
I'm
gin.
rough
Yeah,
from last night
yeah, we were
still. Like
drinking gin last
that's
night.
why
Yeah.
my answers, I'm like, before, you could probably tell, like my brain wasn't keeping up with my mouth. I am so rough today from our friend's 30th birthday last night. And we just drank gin all night. Double
Yeah.
gins.
I was the campus cowboy around, drinking my my gin and lemonade, going bang bang, gonna shoot you, bang bang.
I'm a Catholic.
Oh, you're dead, bang.
You and your assless chaps.
Exactly.
You do a good gay cowboy voice. I like it.
It's practiced.
It's
Oh,
just
but no.
regular Cowboys, right?
Yeah.
So, bro, Jake, my Gyllenhaal, bro.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm gonna be Heath Ledger. You be Jake
I think
Gyllenhaal.
definitely.
Particularly though, like the most important thing for us right now is that we land the plane for Lord of the Rings.
Mm-hmm.
And then the avenues and paths ahead could take many different forms. It feels like there's a whole world. To be very fair, I know that I am the one that holds the podcast back in terms of all the lore. Because it's like we're moving at a pace that is comfortable for me.
Yeah,
Which
but
is a slower pace than Pat is comfortable discussing.
I'm gonna disagree with you there because you probably might not realize this if you're just taking all your comments from fucking YouTube. What you are, and this is the danger of putting something out there on the internet, is you, even with the best meaning people, you're only still dealing with the vocal minority, right? Even the people who are wishing you well, you won't get 300 people a week. If you get 300 listeners in a week, 300 of them aren't coming to talk to you. 1 or 2 will, right? But for those 298 people, you are their surrogate. You are their stand-in for the majority of people. And even for people who already know the material, you are an incredibly useful proxy because you are their surrogate. And it's the same way Rebecca is for us, that you are their stand-in. You represent the audience. Now, when you make a show for an audience, you are not holding it back whatsoever by being a stand-in for the audience. Like,
You're asking the questions that the audience
Yeah.
have. And also, like, even the perspective about the fox that you had. Like, I had a different perspective because I've been brainwashed by Christopher about all this law and philology, whereas you came from a perspective of like the placement in the story of that fox, because you're going through a journey, like you are taking that journey, whereas I've took a journey where it hasn't been in relative like order. It
No, it's not being
hasn't.
linear whatsoever. No, not at all.
No, like it's been
Mm.
full on. Like this is Eru. Like I have learned the world inside and out from Chris, but it hasn't been in an order. There's been no logic to it. So
It's
that's
all I
why.
know is the order.
Yeah.
know? Yeah.
Yeah,
But
that's what they
that's-
said
but
at
that's
fucking
really nice to-
Nuremberg. That won't wash. But no, like so yeah. So for you and Becca, like again, I don't want to speak for Pat, but I hope he agrees that like you're performing one of the more like the equally important part of it, because if you can't relate the law in a way that someone can understand, and let's just be realistic. You don't put on a podcast to stress your brain out and concentrate fully. You put it on as something that you can absorb while you're going about your day or you're driving or something. So you've got to get that level right where you can keep it relaxed enough to learn. If you just wanted to do the hardcore learning, you'd go and just fucking read it or something. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
you get in the Patreon and
well, so that's my last question for you. Is there anything you want to plug? Because again, like I said, we don't monetize, but again, some of our listeners might have money to burn. For example, I'll go first. I have got a book out called The Horror at Beamish Hall, and I'm working on another book. I'm working on a fantasy novel. So the link will be in the description. I'll put the links if you send me the links in, right? So I've got a horror book out called The Horror at Beamish Hall. Just be warned, in the second half, it gets a little bit sexy, but in a Hellraiser kind of way. Someone comment, one of the reviews is, I didn't enjoy the romance. It was too intense. I was like, there is no romance in this book. There is sex. But unless you consider Hellraiser a rom-com, there's no fucking there is sex, but there is not romance. Have a talk to your partner about the difference if you think it's a romantic book. But no, so I
I'm gonna
wrote a
have to
book.
buy this. My wife reviews books and is a bookseller, so
she's
well,
through her
dude,
eyeballs and
she
fairy
loves
smut.
smut too.
Well, that's the thing is, so mine's a horror story set in 1920s northeast England. Now it's based at a real place nearby that gives me the creeps. But I wrote a story all around it. But I'm working on another fantasy novel that should be out in the next year or so. So the link for that will be in the description of this episode. Now, your turn. What would you like to get people to try and buy?
Subscribe to our Sam's.
Only Sam's. Just pictures of Sean Astin.
His feet in the glue trap.
All feet.
What I want people to know about our podcast is that we're not selling anything. We're selling friendship, I guess. We're selling camaraderie, and we're selling a hand reached out to take someone on a journey. So Fool of a Took is, we would love it if people could check us out. We have a Spotify audio. It's basically on every single platform you can possibly imagine, but also specifically, we do video. We are a video podcast. We're one of the few people that take video really, really seriously. One of the hosts is a video producer. So,
This guy.
we take it very seriously, and we have a whole film set put together. You can follow us on Fool of a Took Podcast on all social media. Our YouTube is Fool of a Took Podcast. You can find us on there. You can watch the show. We post a ton of funny clips. And then also another thing that I want to talk about is almost like a one cool thing that is not our podcast related, but is Tolkien related, is, I guess it's our podcast. But last November, the four of us as a podcast traveled to Ireland.
That was fun.
And we recorded our New Year's Day special there. And we went to County Cork, and we went to,
Nice.
I can't remember the name, Maldanon or something like that.
We went to the monastery.
Yeah, so I was taking it. You probably remember more than I do about it.
The other thing is we went to the Rock of Cashel that Barad-dûr was based off of, like that enormous ruin. It was just so fucking cool. But like the striking skylines. And it was kind of neat because RJ, and this is all RJ, she ties in the literature stuff, and she was like, this is this and this is that. And Tolkien talked about this, and he spent time here as a child, and he wrote about this in this letter. And it added an incredible amount of depth to our journey to Ireland. I had never been to Ireland before. But we did 500 miles in 10 days or something. It was nuts. It was gorgeous.
We did a road trip like
so
crazy.
much fun.
I tell you what, nothing beats Americans when it comes to you come over here. No, you come over and like you do crazy fucking journeys. Like I met an American pal the other week in Edinburgh, and then the next day he was like, "Oh, I'm in Bath." I was like, "So it's the other end of the fucking island."
Yeah. But that's our country, so that's all we know.
Yeah, we did a road trip. We went to Tolkien, which is a German festival every year. We'll
You
go.
need to go.
Oh, it's
You
so good.
need to go.
We're going next year. We've already booked it. We got our
When is
tickets.
it?
It's in the end of May next year.
Done. My wife's birthday's in
Windrose are there. Windrose are performing. Yeah, dwarf metal. And there's another band there that are coming back. Like they come out and like with like full armor and stuff.
hole.
Yeah, so they'll be there. We'll be there. We're going to take our daughter, but we drove there because I was at a conference in Prague just after it, and it was the first time in our lives that we've drove like 1,000 miles and that, and we were like, "Oh, this is how Americans must feel." When
Oh,
they're-
As the Americans
when
would
you go to
say,
the shop.
we drove the continent.
We did
Yeah.
drive the continent.
Yeah.
We drove from the northeast of England down to Kent, and then across the Channel, unfortunately through France, and then the rest of the way. But yeah, if you can go, Tolkien was unbelievable. I've got an axe that's behind me. I got a full proper medieval axe. Actually, I'll show you.
Yeah. Oh fuck yeah! Show me the axe. I want to see it. It's wild to me because there's a part of my brain that doesn't accept that the channel exists. So it's like
that's
when you're like, oh, we drove from England. Get the fuck out! Look at that axe. Yo.
Yeah, so I bought it while I was there. Full axe. It now rests in my office, or like in case someone breaks in.
How tall is that? How long is the haft on that? Like, that looks like
It's a
three.
full fucking.
That's like 3.5 feet. That's like.
This is an audio only podcast, right?
I know. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
what we're
it is,
seeing right now
Yeah.
is
So
like.
for anyone who can't tell because you're not watching, the host Chris has his ball out.
Oh, shit. Don't man, because these shots are actually really ripped. You just see a cheeky nut there. Yeah. Anyway, that's good. Looking at my balls.
That reminds me.
You got brained. But no, lads, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. So go and check out their podcast before I put the episode out tonight. So it'll be out in the next couple of hours.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, we move fast over here. It's audio only as well, so I don't have a great deal to do. And I figured it was easier to train myself to talk better than it was to edit more. So
Also, can you guys finish your island bit? Where were you going with
I'm
it?
so sorry about that.
Yeah,
Yes,
so rude.
Fuck, sorry. So you travel 500 miles, right?
That's how
Crazy.
Oh yeah. So we travel all around Ireland. Like we landed in Dublin. We stayed for like 2 nights. That was the longest we stayed in any one place. And then there was some castle somewhere that we were going to like record the podcast episode in. And we got there. And
It was really
like,
expensive too. We specifically rented rooms in a castle
like
to do the
suites in a
podcast.
castle, like a whole ass castle. And we get there. And like these ancient people, like decked out in gems and like 3-piece suits and enormous dresses, like just stare at us because we come in off the road. We almost missed the ferry. It's like 10 o'clock at night. We're covered in
We're
mud and
obnoxious
rain
Americans.
and so loud. And we come in and there's these like older people drinking like brown liquor out of glasses, just eyeballing us. And we're like, oh, that's not very friendly. And we go and we check in and we go up to our rooms and we can like hear the child 2 rooms down the hall, like whispering gently to his father. And we're like, I don't think we can be drunk and loud and shout about Tolkien. I don't think that this is the place for that.
It's gonna fuck with us.
Yeah. And so we ended up not, and it was really good because the people at that hotel, at that castle, there was a wedding. And everyone who was cool had gone out to the after party. All of the assholes had come back to the castle to drink quietly. And we were going to be the people, the Americans on the 3rd floor, absolutely raising hell until 2 a.m.
You know.
And we had an emergency call. We're like, we shouldn't do that. So instead, we took 3 bottles of wine downstairs and played their piano that I don't think we were supposed to play.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
It was fun, but it was a
That's
really
so
wonderful
good.
trip. And my wife, I guess that was like at the forest where the tree. Where was that tree?
It was in the monastery.
The monastery of
Oh, God, I don't know.
the national park in the southwest coastline area.
You
I
know,
can't think of the national park, but
Yeah.
Yeah,
we went
I
to the monastery. It
always
has like
love
this
that.
tree that apparently was like a huge influence for Tolkien on sort of like the elf tree, the tree of the elves or something like that in Rivendell. And
What, like the Malone trees, or
yes.
and
Okay.
I was like, okay, let's see this fucking tree. And we walk inside this like old ruin of a castle, and the most beautiful, was it yew tree?
Yeah, the yew tree is like enormous.
The most
30, 40 feet
beautiful
tall.
tree if you Google the Ireland yew tree Tolkien, it pops up, and I was like flabbergasted into silence. because it's inside the ruin, and it's slowly one day going to break and fade away as it hits the ceiling and dies. But it's this tree in the middle of this decrepit ruin inside, and it has almost no light hitting it, and it's growing despite having no light, and it's fucking huge and cool. And I was just, we all four of us were silenced and
This is
standing
amazing.
there, and I was like, we got to find somewhere to do this podcast in this country. This is so cool. And we showed up to this hotel in County Cork that was very posh. It was our second to last. The next day we were going to be heading back and heading home. And I was like, we got to do it. It's like the last night.
Yeah.
We went up to the host of this fucking hotel. And I was like, hi, we're big podcasters from America. We have a big podcast following. Would it be okay if we did a podcast in your hotel? And they were like, oh, you have a podcast here? And I was like, yeah. Don't look us up, but like, we have like millions of listeners. And so if you could find us like a room to do our podcast in, that would be great. And the guy was like, what's your podcast about? And I was like, The Lord of the Rings. And he goes, I love The Lord of the Rings. And then he went
Hooked
to
us the fuck up.
back of the hotel, opened the private luxury VIP bar, and gave us basically the keys and
The glass
all
hot
night.
house on a view of the river, the whole thing. Gave us the whole fucking place for the night.
And it was beautiful. And so it was the most perfect way to end our trip in Ireland. Montanati or something like that, I think it was called, the hotel. And they were so cool, and they let us do our podcast, and everyone was watching through the windows into this big glass, like lit up. It's like above the pool, like a floating bar kind of VIP.
It's amazing.
It was really cool. So we ended up doing this podcast. We got drunk as fuck. We walked out, we put the podcast up, and our millions of listeners tuned in, as that's what I told them is going to happen. And everybody's going to come to this hotel, and they hooked us up. But anyway, that's our Ireland story, is that we would never have gone if it wasn't for this podcast. So there's so many wonderful things that happen through doing this podcast. One, Pat and I are sitting in my basement talking to you lovely, lovely people. And we have like new friends in another country because of this. And that's so cool. Two, I get to read a book. Yay, moving on. Three, we got to see the world for a minute. I got to go to places that inspired this book. And now I feel like I can truly be a part of the Tolkien community and not feel like I was left out or not able to, like, that gate, like just a big middle finger to gatekeeping. And so I just want to encourage anyone who's made it this far, check out our podcast. It's Fool of a Took podcast. You can find it anywhere if you search Fool of a Took podcast.
What I'll do is, if you message me on Instagram, like a little blurb you want me to put into the description of this, I'll do that. But that's the thing I like about meeting Americans, is that when you say like, oh, if you ever come to England, like we'll do something, because or like if we ever come to America, blah blah, because you always take us up on it. It's fantastic. Like, so like when I met Carl the other week, so funnily enough, I derided the Tolkien Society, but me and Carl are friends, and his wife Amanda was a very good friend, and she passed away a few months ago, and he kind of was coming and spreading her ashes and stuff like that. But they were both like heavily involved in the Tolkien Society, and after she passed away, I cancelled my membership because I was like, she's not there, fuck 'em. I was there for her. But yeah, we were like walking around Edinburgh together. It was lovely. But if you ever come to the UK and you ever visit, well, we could meet up. It'd be lovely. But I'd love to show you Cheddar Gorge. We went a few years ago. It's where the glittering caves, Aglarond.
Oh, really?
It's the inspiration, and they keep the cheese stored in the cave. Cheddar cheese. It's because it's a stable temperature, and it's absolutely beautiful.
You need to have
Cheddar
a cheese pasty.
Yeah, you have a cheese pasty.
About that.
Yeah, it's absolutely beautiful. But yeah, we don't do fancy podcasts. The closest we've got is we recorded a Christmas special after we'd had sex in our living room on our mobile phones. Like that was the closest we've got to traveling for the podcast. Oh, and we also did an episode on Gollum in an orchard in Somerset.
No, that's a lie. We tried to do an episode with
we tried to do one at
Celia.
Tolkien, yeah, but we were all just too fucking drunk. It was after we got back from Tolkien, and it was a question. I just said like, who
it was
would
after
you?
The gig, wasn't it, on the Friday night?
All I'd said was, who would you take on a heist in Middle Earth? And then Celia, drunk as fuck, just went off on a rant about how she hated Gimli for 20 minutes, and we were shouting over each other, and it was just chaos. That was 4 of us. So kudos to you guys, because I could never do that. We were just, it was like the gang from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia when they're arguing. That was exactly what it sounded like. Yeah, there was no salvaging it. So I was like, right, you're not on the podcast anymore.
On our podcast, I am actively yelling at Pat. If you've ever seen It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, that is our podcast. And it's fun.
I want to go back to emotional outbursts. I don't want logic anymore. But no, right, lads, it's been absolutely fantastic. So I'm going to stop the recording here. So I'm going to say goodbye from me, Chris.
Goodbye from Rebecca.
Cheers, folks. This is Chris.
Bye from Patrick.
Bye, everyone.